Want to be happy? Build a life, not just a business. Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and this channel was created to help you overcome the #1 challenge that is holding you back, a lack of belief in yourself. You watch these videos because you know there's something more inside you too. You've got Michael Jordan level genius at something. So today, let's live your best belief life and get some incredible motivation from the one and only Gar Vaynerchuk.
If you even for a second think it's a good idea for Apple and Google and Facebook to help you be less addicted, you are on the path of losing. You don't like Instagram? Delete it. The second we allow ourselves to let the machines help us help ourselves is the second you become more vulnerable. I believe that.
Can you explain that more?
Sure. Like, you want Apple to limit the amount of time you're on Instagram for you? Yeah. Like, you think that's the way, that's what, you want that? Mazel tov, take it. But like, I promise you, then there's gonna be the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. You're either social media is exposing us, it's not changing us. There is no social media, brother. They're empty pipes. Social media doesn't make you mean. Social media doesn't make you insecure. You're insecure. You're mean. We're getting exposed, not changed. We're addicted to human interaction. The reason the world exists in a world where we've had atomic bombs for 70 years is we like each other. We're not addicted to social media. We are interactive creatures. You're addicted to people. Cool. You don't want to be on Instagram? Go read Vogue. Knock yourself out. This is a very fun thing for me to watch evolve. People don't like being held accountable. So a lot of things, the way that these platforms claim they're addictive is the way a lot of things are addictive. Are we gonna ban pretty people? Are we gonna limit our time to watching comedy? Are we gonna limit the time we listen to music? This is the demonization, bless you, this is the demonization of technology. Let me give you a really good piece of advice. Go read the articles around the kaleidoscope. I'm being dead serious. Go Google the early articles around the kaleidoscope. You'll think you're reading about Instagram. History's got all the answers. I failed, I could not be in this program because I failed all my classes, but the one class I was good at was history, and it is the continuous framework of how I think about a lot of this stuff. Literally the articles of the kaleidoscope are making the same arguments now. So if you have FOMO, it's because you have levels of insecurity that are raging, which has a lot more to do with the way you were parented and where you grew up and the natural DNA you were given, not Snapchat. So how do I think it's gonna play out? In its worst, our government gets disproportionately involved, which will be fine. I could care less. Just so everybody knows, I care about attention, not social media. So if we all stop doing social media, I'm gonna figure out where your eyes and ears are going. You're gonna go somewhere. We're not locking ourselves up in a room. So I don't give a Google and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok and LinkedIn can disappear off the face of the earth tomorrow, and I'd probably be the single happiest person because my most comfortable state is reacting quickly to where attention goes. I just feel bad for any human being that thinks that's gonna help them, because they're gonna find something else to complain about or to be controlled by. This is an internal framework conversation, not an external technology conversation. I'm really in rarefied air of like deep obsession with my process and enjoyment and lack of anxiety from it and lack of burnout from it. I think I hit my crescendo. I think I'm more of an artist. I don't think people realize that business women and men are actually, there's a certain version of us that are artists that genuinely like this more than anything. Like singing, like Beyonce's a workaholic.
Yeah.
You know, like Kobe was a workaholic.
Obsessing over their craft, their art form, their expression. Yeah.
So for me, like we demonize it in entrepreneurship and corporate life, but we don't in art. We put artists, oh, he's in the studio all the time. Wow. You know, painting all the time. Wow. Cooking and traveling the world to buy food. Wow. Business. Oh, he's going to burn out. He's going to suicidal.
Why is that? Is that just because of the old way of thinking, like getting burnt out in the corporate world of doing a job you hate?
Yeah. Money. You know, I don't think people like Mark Teixeira made $213 million playing baseball. But if some entrepreneur makes 30 million, they get demonized. It's just culture. And it's okay. Like, I don't think that's wrong, right, or indifferent. It's just the obvious observation, right? We demonize the startup founder or the businesswoman much, much more than the entertainer that makes way more money. What you need to do if you have this mission accomplished is worry about your actions, not anybody else's. The biggest problem in our society right now is everybody worries about everybody's actions but their own. On every side of the equation. So what I would tell you to do is what I'm doing for a living, which is I have unbelievable social wants of kindness for the world, but I'm not gonna allow my friends to tell me how to do that. My friends tell me I need to be a keyboard warrior on Twitter. I think they're full of and trying to look good on social media but don't live their truth.
So it's about understanding the unique perspective that you bring and not letting other people kind of like play with that.
In action, meaning continue to do your podcast, continue to put out content, continue to wear your t-shirt, but not worry about what anybody else is doing with it, because when you try to boil the ocean, you don't.
What's been your biggest fear in all of this? Or do you feel like you're pretty fear-proof at this moment with everything you've been through?
I'm fear-proof because I'm willing to go to zero.
Yeah. You can live on in a small apartment and, you know, live at your parents' house.
I really can, man.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say. Like, this has proven it to me even more. You know, any 0.0001% of me that thought, well, I've been saying this for the last 2 years, am I full of shit, has completely gone away.
Yeah.
Like, I don't fear because I don't value things and money. My biggest fear is my parents getting sick. Mm-hmm. Like, my biggest fear is like somebody getting sick and dying, nothing else. Like, business, I can always, like, I'm too capable, right? Like, you know, back to the thing you brought up, back to why you were an Olympian, back to like why you beat me anything when we were on Summit at Sea, like whatever, basketball, like you aren't worried when it comes to sport, you know, your mind just goes into, this is going to be a good situation for me.
Yeah.
And for
I feel
me,
comfortable.
And for me, that's business. Like, I know for a fact that if I became a 100% full-time garage sale, thrift store, Amazon flipper, that I'd make $1 million a year. Yeah. I know that for fact. So what the hell am I? Yeah. And that doesn't take into account that I've built a brand. And sure, my brand would take a hit if all my businesses went to zero. But the reality is, America's funny, man. Like, there's people following and helping O.J. Simpson. There's, you know, Wolf of Wall Street. Like this is a country that gives second, third, fourth chances regardless. Mm-hmm. And so, like, I'm already at a place right now where between brand and capability and humility, I'm bulletproof. But the reality is, I know what's going on in the Vayner world. Obviously, I know what's going on in the broad sense, but I spend almost no time auditing what other brands are doing. And plus, if we're talking from a brand standpoint, well has to be reflected in business results. There's a ton of people that are gonna win awards today that business is declining dramatically. And I struggle with that because the point of that creativity is to drive a business result in this context, or get people to vote, or inspire a movement, or cure a disease. Like, what's the point of output if you're not getting the end result? I've loved myself the whole time, thank God. Most don't. But I haven't allowed me to get high on my own supply. My humility is my great offset to my confidence. And I think that manifests. And I think one of the things you were saying, when you were saying it, I knew what you were saying, which is you have the luxury of seeing really behind the scenes, truly. Yeah. And I think what you know is, forget about like giving to a nonprofit. It's just the genuine kindness of replying to somebody's request or doing something for somebody with no ask, no expectation, and nobody knows. And you know this because you run in entrepreneurial circles like I do. And you know when you stumble on somebody who knows me as well, they're going to bring up something that I did that was nice and nobody knows about it. And that is only one thing. That is called humility. I could be micromanaging in the philosophy, But, you know, I think if you speak to anybody who's been a direct report of mine over the last decade, the biggest argument and issue they have is I'm not involved enough. I am in the bat phone business. What that means, since I'm using a Batman reference, and I'm not sure how big Batman is in Sweden, or now that we're going global on the podcast, I'm in the business of being in responding to. So I have no interest in micromanaging until there's an issue at hand. And so, yes, somebody could say that philosophically, but in actual practitionership or operational, the way this, you know, energy that I'm speaking about manifests in reality is you're only putting your finger in the hole that is biggest in your boat at that moment, which means there's a lot of boat left for those people to run. 30 and a half, I'm on this random flight, I'm just laying there, not feeling tired, not feeling lethargic, no cliche thing, no heartburn that I think I'm getting a heart attack, nothing. I'm just laying there and I'm saying, you know, if I treated my health the way I treated businesses, I'd win. And so I just started, actually, I remember what happened because I was like, doesn't feel right. I was thinking about my 40th birthday and I was thinking, you know, at 30, I changed my life. I went from the executor to, I need to go for it. If I don't do from 30 to 40, it's not going to happen. So let me go for it in that decade. And I was like, what am I going to do at 40? Weirdly, I don't feel the same pressure I did at 30. I think I'm on a better career path. Like, I don't feel the angst to like, it didn't feel right to triple down on work. And so I said, health is nowhere close to where it should be. I'm the way I make fun of people in business, you're not doing anything right that's going to help you long term. I'm not doing anything right with health. When I turn 40, I'm going to get serious. So then a week later, I'm on a flight again. Flights made me think, and I'm like, the fuck am I waiting to 40 for? I could do a lot of bad in this next 18 months. 39 in November. This is around May, and in November I'm going to go for it. And literally the next morning, I'm like, why? Life is broken down into complaining and not. So if you're not complaining, well, then I have no advice for you. I'm pumped. Like, you did it. Like I have friends who make $42,000 a year, work 9 to 4, kind of, with an hour and a half lunch and 45 minutes of YouTube and 10 minutes of bullshit and an hour of complete wasted time in a meeting. So they're kind of working like 6, hours a week, right? But they're pumped. Right. And they text me, these are high school friends, and they'll text me like how happy they are to be the coach of their kids' baseball team. And like, that's amazing. Like, that seems very obvious to me. Like, that's right. Like, what's super weird? I'm actually weirdly envious. It sounds cool, like, in theory, right? Grass is always greener, right? Like, far less pressure, like all that time with my kids, oof, that would be cool. Like, there's just like all these things that I can justify. So to me, but I have friends who have $100 million in the bank because of Facebook's IPO, who complain, who are still hungry, who want to do even more, who will complain to me because they know I work a lot about no work-life balance and they don't get to spend enough time with their family. And I'm like, you have $100 million. Like, you could stay home. Like, you're in control. Like, don't complain about it. You've made that choice. Don't bullshit me. Like, you want to spend more time with your family? Spend more time with your family. My definition of success for me is to be able to do what I want to do at all times, always, and be happy about it. Having freedom is everything.
Has that changed over the years?
No, but I don't think I didn't realize what was going on in my youth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, no, I wasn't, it's hard for you to really know yourself completely at this point. You'll look back and realize it was all the same shit. By articulating it takes time within yourself, and also just takes time of you actually executing on it. Back to like the sub-context of what we're talking about here, one of my biggest problems right now of like everybody who's trying to make positive impact is they're doing semantical work, not actual work, right? They're jockeying for their personal reputation by what they wear or what hashtag they use, not necessarily what they're actually doing. And if they actually ask them, once they actually embrace the fact that they're being selfish, then they can become selfless. If you actually make pretend nobody else lives on earth, nothing is scary.
Why is the opinions of others such a heavy thing for people to overcome?
I think it's humanly, like, this is where I think, like, this is truly my great gift. I'm so grateful for it. I think people got caught. I think they just get caught that everybody's in this framework of other people's opinions. Like just, it's how we're raised. Like,
how do we train ourselves to get out of it if it's something for 10, 20, 30 years, 50 years we've been living that way?
The same way I trained at 38 and a half that I have no way of taking care of my health. I don't like eating habits. I don't like exercising, and just pounding. Every day, everybody, this is why I put out so much content. Maybe today's the day that I say it a different way that makes people realize their mom and their girlfriend and their boyfriend and their uncle, and definitely anonymous people on social media, and Lewis and Gary's opinions actually don't matter. Wow, the liberation to then actually do shit. And now you're doing shit full throttle because of whether you win or lose, it doesn't matter. You can't hear the cheering. This is why I'm trying to get people out of hearing the cheering. It's my newest thing in the last year or two. I'm like, wait a minute, right. Because everybody says you're so hot on Instagram that when they say you're not, you start doing plastic surgery, right? When everybody says like, you're such a great business person, you start keeping up that facade instead of like, it just makes so much sense. So to me, the biggest thing is the humility was such a factor. I didn't realize how big of a deal that was, how much that worked for me. Is like, I don't believe I'm as great as I know I am. Like my logical side knows that I'm up to something, but I just don't internalize it. I won't let it penetrate my soul. I think I have the ability to be the biggest deal, but I will never believe it. I actually like losing more than winning, I've come to learn. This is something I'm really trying to reconcile. I actually like losing more than winning. It speaks volumes to why I'm obsessed with the Jets and Knicks and completely have abandoned the Yankees and the Rangers after they won a championship. I like losing more.
Micro losing or macro losing?
Micro losing, but everything is micro losing besides death or bankruptcy.
Like being the underdog.
Yep. Like I just don't give a fuck what you guys think. And that goes from you all the way up to my parents. That by recognizing that you guys don't have nor my parents has all the context. Nobody fully knows you. It's actually through empathy.
At what age was that like?
Early. Like I can't believe how now understanding a little bit more back to like being in your own cocoon, I can't believe the mentality I brought into high school. Like to navigate high school the way I did, which is like completely and utterly not affected by peer pressure in hindsight, is wild to me. That takes a level of like self-confidence at such an early age that I think I just understand so much more of what I am now really on that window, because that is such a tough spot. And that.
Do you attribute that to your parents and the work from a young age, or
yes.
Your parents?
The DNA my parents gave me, clearly the way that my mother raised me, having to earn my keep, and then just like DNA, man, just like that voice that we all have. Like, I just always felt that I was better. And here's where it gets really good. But if the world showed me I wasn't, like I remember going through, this is actually interesting, I don't know if I've ever shared this. I remember vividly going through the ages of like 7 to like 16, being stunned anytime I didn't win in something. Like shocked. Like just could not believe that Rick was better at tennis, or John just beat me in one-on-one, or I wasn't the fastest in my class, or like just shocked. And you know, and I've been thinking about that lately because it sparked in me a few months ago. I'm like, wait a minute, that was weird. What was that? Because I just kind of remembered it. Like shock. I remember actually what seemed in my mind as a disappointing thing at the time, and now I look as a great thing. I remember thinking somewhere around 13, 14, 15, that I lost my expectation of always winning in everything every time. And I remember thinking like that wasn't good, but in hindsight, I think it was great, because the reality is I got into this place of complete and utter confidence, but being able to not come up with excuses if it didn't work out. Like watching people like lose and then blame the sun. Like literally, like I overheard it a couple of weeks ago somewhere. I was walking I'm on vacation. I overheard it. Like this kid lost to his cousin. It seemed to me they didn't look like brothers, and he was blaming the sun. And it took everything I had to not like roll in and be like, bro, I love you, but like you need to realize like The sun was there for him too. And I think a lot about that, accountability. Like, if you're coming up with excuses, like being super confident, filled with excuses when it doesn't work out is called delusion. So, I feel great because I love process. I think you should invest, whether it's you or the person below you, but no further than that, over 100 hours of qualitative consumption of every personal brand trying to convert on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, to just see if there's anything you see. One of the biggest mistakes, one of the things I've never talked about that I'm starting, that literally this might be the first time I'm talking about, this is what's good about 2 weeks vacation. You get to think like, I don't know if I'm articulating enough to people how much research I'm doing. Now I'm doing it with audience. I'm not seeing what, Richard Branson's doing or I don't do that. I just consume everything my audience is doing with me. Everything. All of it. I'm just reading all the comments. How do you speed up things? Less rules. How do you speed up things? Less process. How do you speed up things? Less fear. This is something that has been my calling card for 20 years, and it is out of complete and utter lack of fear, complete and utter disdain for process that is in the mix for the sake of process. Obviously some process is needed. And this is ultimately was the first reason I got into culture, besides having good DNA about liking people. It was that I understood that if people were motivated and excited, that great things would happen versus fearful and political. The type of leader that will create this is one that really focuses on those three things that I just mentioned.
For someone like myself who wants to go into entrepreneurship ultimately and start a business, I'm interested in several areas like media, emerging tech, all that, but I don't really know which specific thing I want to do. Would you say to start at some company first and then kind of figure it out from there, or just kind of go?
How do you learn?
I think mostly by doing.
So then don't go to a company.
But I feel like there's a lot of I guess pressure in a sense to go.
You can stop this sentence right there. You know that you learn that way, but you're gonna do something else based on somebody else.
Yeah, no, makes sense.
That's what everyone's doing, bro. And so everyone's sitting around and trying to figure out why all these young people are so upset. It's because of all this. Because they were over-coddled by a generation of over-coddling parents, and they don't know how to do their own shit. And I think they can do tons of shit and believe you can do so much as long as you tune out. Are you in a place where you're comfortable to do what I lived through? I lived it. I lived a world where, now I'm me, but 26-year-old me was ringing up my friends from high school at my dad's liquor store when they rolled in with their BMW because they went to a good school and started working at Goldman Sachs and could afford one, or not really, but they wanted to look like they could, and they were buying a case of Moet Chandon, and I was ringing it up for them, and this is real stories now, and carrying the case to their car and putting it in their trunk. I walked in feeling fulfilled because I was happy I made a sale. They were leaving there feeling unbelievable because Gary's bringing out my case. The problem was that was just when we were 26. Now that we're 43, it's real different. I just had the internal strength to deal with that scenario. 99% of you aren't. When every entrepreneur who's listening right now knows one thing that I know, that your business is your second child, is your third child, is your fourth child. I have no idea how many children everyone has. That's the answer, because I'm treating my business like a parent.
Or your spouse.
Yeah, but even more like a parent, and I'll tell you why. With a spouse or a partner, that's a lateral relationship, whereas a child or a business, you're in charge of it. You're grooming it. It's almost like your garden, right? Those tomatoes are gonna come out, that's you, with the macro. I can't control Mother Nature, just like I can't control the world. but I can maximize my tomatoes this year if I do good behavior. And that's how I think about my businesses.
How can you talk about how you foster a relationship that engages both employees and customers? Because I see this being outside of the company walls. This is the style your company has towards customers as well, seeing them as people. How do you foster that kind of leadership?
By holding people accountable that have clout in doing the same.
Cloud means influence.
Yes.
And ability to change things.
Yes. It is imperative that the 50 most senior people in my company have somewhere between an 80 to 99% of this in their soul as well. I can't ask them to be 100% of the same intent that I have, as much as possible. And then it is my job, back to the earlier statement of everything's your fault, when you have control, it's my job to make the tough decision when somebody no longer is allowed to be in our company when they don't embody that mission. The biggest challenge I had to face was about year 6. I was creating entitlement because I was putting too much on my own shoulders.
What do you mean by entitlement?
I was making it too easy for everybody and people got entitled.
Within the company?
Yep.
So you were saying, I'll take this on, I'll take this on?
In the macro. I was creating so much top line revenue and everybody was getting raises like crazy, and I was creating such a great culture that I made us soft, which is wild.
Because you were doing the sales and the pitching and everything yourself?
I was impacting so much that 300, 400, 500 people had it too easy, and we had to do like a 35-person layoff because I just gotta cut the fat, because I didn't need to do it financially. I needed to do it to just culturally get everybody to understand, like, these people that were just like, oh, weren't good at their job. They were nice people, but if we keep carrying this will die.
They weren't great at their job. They were
not even close. They weren't even close.
Yeah.
It was nice people over everything, and that was it. If you weren't nice, you were getting fired. But if you were nice, that was tough. And it was tough for me to realize, wow, on Tea with Gary Vee, on keynotes and interviews, on the stage, I have great candor and accountability, but in my own shop, I wasn't candorous enough, and I created entitlement because I love happiness and and all that.
And everyone loving you, and yeah.
But I went too far with it, so that was tough. That was a moment, because I never got to that level with Wine Library, because it was still happening there, but it was a small enough business and a family business, and it was real family, cousins and best friends, that it had a different dynamic. So I didn't see it coming. So that was interesting. Measuring the ROI of something isn't predicated on just doing it. It's predicated on how good you are at it, right? So like, this is where people get caught with this question. The everything I'm about to say, the complete variable is how good you are at the thing. That includes television. The place where everybody gets caught in television, in Instagram, in Amazon, in everything, is they get something to work in their math, and then they don't realize that they can still innovate their creative to do better.
I think also, do you go into the mindset of knowing, like, this could be 100 million or it could be 0, and you're okay if it's 0, or do you still?
I go into everything thinking it's going to be 0.
Really?
Yeah. It really makes it. Why do you think? Notice, doesn't make sense? Now all of a sudden, I go in with no hope.
No expectation.
No expectation. I don't do it for my kicks and giggles. I think it's going to work.
Yeah.
If I'm running it, it's going to work because that's what I'm good at. But almost everything I don't run. I don't run Pure Wow 137. Harwood does. I don't run Vayner Sports. AJ does. I don't run Vayner Speakers. Zach Nadler does. I'm impacting the living shit out of those businesses.
You're influencing them. Yeah.
Oh, in a real way.
Yeah.
But push comes to shove, I don't make those decisions. And so, and I support my partners in crime. And so that's kind of how it is. I think the reason my voice is resonating is I'm not affected by anybody else right now. I'm only affected by the way people are reacting to me, which allows me to continue to build in the purity of human truths without blending and trying to be like.
So you're clearly a very busy guy with controlling your public image and.
You'll appreciate this. real quick on that front, just to jump in, I'll let you finish. I give zero thoughts to controlling my public image. Zero. I mean, my team's in here. I don't even look at what they're making. The way I control my public image is by living my truth and letting the chips fall. It's the most liberating thing of all time. I don't think about it at all. I do think my parents, for me, and they parented all three kids a little bit differently, but they're like, they were such workaholics. Both my mom was a stay-at-home mom, but like did everything. And I think people very much underestimate stay-at-home moms as workaholics. Like she just worked her face off, no help.
No breaks.
No breaks. We were all spoiled kids from the fact of laundry and doing our bed, and she cooked everything. And then my dad came home late and cooked for him. Like she worked her face off. So they could have created a little more balance. We only took 2 family vacations. So they taught me work ethic, kindness, everything. Everything I am is them. But I do think the thing that we have more is balance with, leisure and offsetting 24/7 work. But that makes sense. It's generational. They came here with nothing, and it was 24/7 work. And I have so much of that in me, but I've had the luxury of my talents leading to a success that's allowed me to post. Listen, that's how my first 10 years professionally looked too. But now being able to take a little bit of time, and so maybe a little balance, because I think they regret that, and so you try to take your parents' regrets and not have the same. Yeah. And so I look at that.
That's cool.
Everybody fucks up marketing because they're going to always lean into sales because they need to hit short-term objectives. The end. That's where leadership has to come in and create rules for engagement. That's why I love 80-20. It's why I love Army and Navy SEALs. It's why I win. I create businesses like Vayner that is my foundation of 80, and then I taste with 20% around it. That's how VaynerX got built, and then even outside the Vayner universe, that's how the K-Swiss and the Empathy Wines and all that, this is how it all works. That's marketing. Because everybody's a sales, you're a sales organization. Yeah. So let's put a little fund on the side or a little team on the side, and that's marketing. And if it goes to dead zero, you've decided at the macro level that $800,000 to dead zero is super fine by me, because it's not gonna be dead zero, but now you've created autonomy and lack of confusion and to actually make that happen. I care about people's emotions and happiness and overall livelihood, not what they produce for me in the short term as an employee of my company. I don't know what else to say. I care more about, I look at our voluntary retention numbers 10 times more than I look at our profit margin. And I'm an HR driven CEO, not a CFO driven CEO. Here's why. I want to create clarity for everybody who's listening. Because I'm playing forever. I own my businesses. So for me, I can do things that lead to retention and a real relationship, because I'm not held accountable to Wall Street or a public market or a board, or am so money hungry that I want a yacht. And I believe most are. What is amazing about the volume model is the notion of marketing for the sake of better marketing. So what happens after you post those 78 is you start getting quant and qual feedback. And what you do with that feedback is you make the next decision, which is, are you gonna write more about that? Or has there been such a huge reaction to people's response on what 5G actually means to their day-to-day, not just faster and better battery, but how our entire world changes when you create that speed of information, how that actually makes autonomous cars real, how that actually allows a doctor in Peru to perform a surgery on somebody in New York, how that actually does. When you see the response, now all of a sudden you say, you know what? That little 3 sentences we said about, did you know, when 5G is in your life, this happens, got such a big response. Why don't we now have our graphic designer make an infographic real quick around 5 things you don't know about 5G, and let's post that at 3:37 p.m. today. And then when that goes well, then you decide, why don't we make a quick little video on our iPhone talking to Lars in R&D? He knows a lot about this shit. Let's go over to him. Lars says, and then you just post it, not with what's quality, with green screen and lighting. I mean, I was powdered before I came out here right now. That to me is not the variable of success of this talk. That was not gonna be the variable that made this go well or not. It was what I was gonna say. And Lars, with an iPhone, with bad lighting, saying something thoughtful, and then that posted at 7:04 p.m. on our Twitter to the small group that cares, matters. And so when you get into that mindset, you can see how it works. And it's really just having writers, designers, something we call predators, shredditors, which are people who can film and post-produce for the channel all in one person. Talent. Humans. Commitment to being able to pay those people to do the thing. Because you value that more than the lighting in your booth in Spain at a conference. The single thing I'm most proud of sitting at Cannes is there's not a human here, not one, that makes more creative output than I do on a daily basis and collective, period. That is an audacious but factual statement. There's not one person here that makes more content than I do. And I'm a CEO of a company, not a creative. And in that, you can imagine in a world where me and my team are producing 40 to 100 pieces of content a day across all these platforms, there's a practitionership that allows me, I mean, the amount of mistakes, you know, it's fun to have D-Rock here because he's on the text chain with me and my team. We change our mind 7 times a month. I constantly shit on my own self once a week. Like I emphatically on Monday say, it's all about this, and literally next Tuesday go, if we ever do that again, we're fit. I mean, this is real life. This is the truth.
So you're testing and learning with yourselves?
At a scale that is unseen right now and should be replicated by everyone, which gives me much better insights to what the consumer's reacting to. And then obviously I'm a human with a certain kind of flavor, so that doesn't map to Dove the same exact way. So there's macro things we see that we deploy and then we see how it plays out. It's never literal from me to, I'm a human, I'm a 43-year-old male. There's a lot of things that don't navigate, but there's a lot of truths that we navigate, that we test and learn there, and that we scale. So it is the ultimate test lab. Health keeps me up at night. The health and well-being of the 12 people that I'm closest related to or love the most as a friend scares the fuck out of me. Like way more than it scares most people. I think about it all the time because I don't care about the work enough. Like it's what my passion is, but like if a core 12 person in my life is terminally ill or passes away, it will shut me down. So that keeps me up. Professionally, I'm not kept up. I'm capable, I'm talented. Business is tricky because we don't treat business the way we treat music artists and athletes, but I think it's much more similar to that than it is other things. So like once you know you're a good athlete, like you may not win every game, but like LeBron's not confused that he's bad. You know, he doesn't think like tomorrow he's not gonna be able to play. He may not win every game, and I genuinely feel like I'm that. Like I'm not gonna miraculously tomorrow not be what I've been for the last 38 years of my life, which is a disproportionately successful business human, right? So I'm good. When you're innovating, you're gonna be misunderstood. Like when we decided 3.5 years ago to film everything, I knew that that wasn't gonna be so easy to navigate life. I mean, this is, at least this setting is somewhat normal. How about in your normal day-to-day when you're just going to a normal meeting and you're being filmed, like people are gonna cast judgment, and I don't want to come across that way. It's just that the value of content at scale is the cost of entry for success, in my opinion, of this next decade. And yeah, that's why we do it. There's a lot of push towards being a workaholic, and hard work is a learned behavior. I see it in my team. There's people that come into I've seen it in the thousands of employees I've had, which is the closer they are to the sun, the harder they work. And I'm like, aha. And so I definitely feel like I learned hard work by watching my parents. And so it's why I talk so much about hustle.
Because it's one of the things that people can actually adjust and turn to.
I watch people give advice completely predicated on natural talent and DNA, and I'm like, look, like I get it, like I can throw a football every day for 9 hours a day. I'm just not physically built to be competitive at the highest levels. So yeah, I do think, you know, if anybody watching right now, if there's anything they take away, it's like, look, Like you're gonna only be so pretty, you're only gonna be so smart. There's things that are gonna be natural and then there's things that you can actually control. I do believe, and I don't know if I'm right or wrong, I don't, but I do believe that work ethic is a taught behavior. It's something you do have more control over. And yeah, I think, and you know what really sealed the deal for me? Getting healthier. I was 38 years old and it didn't come natural to me. Like it didn't come natural to me at all. I hate the gym. I hate it now. I hate it. I don't like it. I don't want to do it. But I knew it was important. And somewhere around midway through being 38 years old, I got serious. I figured out my system. I made the financial commitment and I've won. Who gets to decide what focus is? I have a wine company, a shoe deal, content, VaynerMedia, fucking wine library, Gary Vee, baseball cards I'm trying to sell, garage sale. I'm the least focused you'll ever meet. Guys, if you're a real entrepreneur, you kind of can't just do one thing. That's how we're up, right? Like, I'm gonna come up with 3 business ideas in the next hour. And I'm gonna do that every day, and I'll probably do 2 of them in the year because that's what makes us happy.
When you look yourself in the mirror, what do you see and what do you say to yourself?
Probably the most egotistical things that I say. I'm probably most egoed out when I'm talking to myself, which means that I've got a lot of confidence and ego. I really, whenever I talk to myself in the mirror, it's always the same thing, which is like, you're gonna do it, man. You're good. Like it's real good stuff. And it's not like false pumping up. I only do it 7 times a year. But like something would have just happened, either adversity or something great. And I'll look myself and say, we got this. I got a funny, Kevin Durant walked off the field, off the court the other day against the Warriors. And it was a big game, day before the Super Bowl, and they lost. It was the first time they played, and the Warriors are having probably the greatest season of any basketball, right?
Yeah.
And he did something that me and AJ took note of. He kind of shook his head and said, okay, yeah. And he gave me that like, okay, you won, but we'll see you. And we got a shot. I got this.
Right.
And that's what I do with myself. Like if something good or bad's happening, I'll look myself in the mirror and I'll just say, like I know I'm built for this. One of the biggest reasons, forget about the current way people view Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg's deep understanding of human psyche was the #1 reason we connected. I think I'm an extremely good marketer because I think this entire thing that we're at right now is an internal B2B ecosystem, and the only thing I pay attention to is the end consumer. I know so little about what's going on here. This is literally the first 3 years I was here, I only did this event. I didn't know anything else. You guys remember, Harriet just joined us to run comms from BBDO. She's incredible. I'm still asking her on the way here. She's like, we were finalist, what's it called? Shortlist. She's like, we were shortlisted for a bunch of stuff today. I'm like, I don't even know. I literally thought it was finalist. Like I still, Adam, yesterday we won a silver thing and I was like, what does that mean? Like I still am so deeply unaware of what's happening here. Not out of audacity, not out of disrespect. I actually love coming here, the vibe. I love hanging with you guys. I love this. It's just that everything I think about is the consumer. It's the only thing that matters. Fame and money doesn't change you. Fame and money takes the energy out of you. It takes the hunger out of you. When you're when you're hungry and nobody's feeding you, but then you get a big 18 burgers and you eat them all. So I'm always suppressing the good that everybody's chasing because it keeps me hungry as fuck. Let me give you the most liberating thing that I could ever tell an artist or somebody trying to make something happen. If you're good enough, it's gonna happen. I believe in that the most. All the people that are now 53 and they thought they were good enough, they weren't. It wasn't that they picked the wrong manager. It wasn't that the gatekeepers stopped them. They weren't good enough. Especially now, my guy. What gatekeeper? Keep putting shit on SoundCloud and Spotify. Are you kidding me? 20 years ago, Killy had no shot. There were gatekeepers. There's no gatekeepers. Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, and SoundCloud, that's the gatekeeper. And guess what? Even if you run Rap Caviar, you're not the gatekeeper. You're a mini gatekeeper. show up on Rap Caviar. That's happened. Then they pick. But you gotta get to that first step. Love your fans unconditionally. Put out music that's in your soul. It will happen. Yeah, man, I love that. I love the selfish and selfless. I love pulling from opposite directions. I love giving a fuck what some nerd in his basement is saying about me anonymously on your tweet. And I equally love that I don't give a fuck about what anybody thinks, including my parents and my mom. That's the best. Of course, we all do. I'm reading all of it. I'm the greatest. I'm a piece of charlatan and everything in between. And I'm just taking it in. And the best part is I'm unbeatable. The people that say I'm the greatest, I'm like, fuck you, I suck. The people that like, you suck, I'm like, I'm the best of all time. I'm gonna stick it in your mouth. Like, that's what you have to do. It's the balance. And so we started VaynerMedia. You know, it's interesting. My aspirations were a couple things I didn't know. First of all, the first 45 people that worked for my agency had 0 days of agency experience. I mean, you wanna talk about a show? Like, we won $1 million scope from Pepsi, and on the way out, the guy grabs me and says, hey, incredibly provocative, you're gonna get the business. This is incredible, this is what we're looking for. It's 2009. Then he goes, one piece of advice. I'm like, please, because it was so early. He goes, you need to hire somebody who knows how to make a deck. I will never forget that. And by the way, it took us another 3 years before we actually knew how to make a deck. We are the fastest organically grown to $100 million revenue agency in the industry's history. And we win no RFPs. Like, we're just incapable. Because we come in with a philosophy. We're not willing to, like, you know, everybody sells on an idea, and it's just not something, you know, we half pregnant it, we flirt with it, but like the truth is we have a philosophy, which is a couple things that we believe in that I think are unique. One, we believe that volume of creative is the cost of entry of relevance of the next decade. And that we think this world needs to understand that quantity does not mean lack of quality.
Do you feel like you judge yourself?
I don't. That's a very, very, very good observation, and it's what I want for everybody else. We're beating ourselves up. Like, everybody sucks at something, right? Like, we all have shortcomings, and we all have strengths. And for me, it's like, why don't we just audit that? Like, why don't we just look at it that way and be like, all right, well, I'm good at this, but I'm not good at that. Like, and then I only focus what I'm good at, right? Like, I don't dwell that I can't fix shit around the house. I call somebody to fix it. Like, I'm not a man. I don't give a like, you know, I don't get it. Like, we all, like, I also think it's awesome that I'm so emotionally stable and I'm the emotional backbone of everybody. Is that what a dude's supposed to do? Like these cliches, these stereotypes, they're so silly. You're exactly right, man. I don't judge myself. I'm fully in love with myself. But I'm also fully in love with everybody else too, right? It's not like it goes both ways. Like, I tell people to buy into me, that work for me, it's because I buy into them first. Like, I don't need anybody to gain trust with me. It's there. Like, I believe that the human race is so grossly underrated. We are good. Of course we have some bad. There's 7 billion of us. But like, when you look at our net score, it's bonkers. Like, do you know how much damage we could be doing to each other on an hourly basis? And we don't? Like, we're still here. Like, we won. We're the alpha being, and we've figured out how to stay together. This is insane when you think about it. And yet everybody wants to dwell on, like, somebody said something mean.
You don't think it's possible to grow the entrepreneur?
I do.
Okay.
I think it's possible to grow anything.
Okay.
I think that I could be a better singer in 3 years. I think that I could be a better basketball player. Do I think I can become Beyonce and LeBron even if I started at 6 years old? No, I do not.
Yeah, that's right.
And so,
but you have a better chance of being a master entrepreneur than a master basketball player.
I don't know. Is how I answered that. I do think that salesmanship and organizational understanding and reverse engineering and pattern recognition is absolutely a talent. And I think, Grant, it's funny you asked me that. I think we in the world have accepted music and sports as a pure play talent. And I think entrepreneurship is something we think everybody has. And I do think everybody can. And by the way, I think it's phenomenal to go from working at a job and not being on your own rules to making a business that makes $89,000 a year, but you get to do it your way.
Yeah.
In a world where people need to be more practical, meaning not everybody's gonna be a millionaire. It's just the truth, the data's against you. But it is phenomenal to live a life where you get to make the rules and you make enough money to live your life. I would only write one thing down.
What would that be?
5149. I would run a 51, I'd run a slash, and I'd write a 49.
What's it mean?
It would mean that I wanted to give everybody that ever came across me 51% of the value. And that's how I live my life. I so know what to do with the 49 that I want to give 51. It's leverage. It's how I think about it. It makes me feel good. I love being liked. Lewis, look, you and I run in similar circles and around a lot of different things. You know what I'm about to say is so true, and I'm very proud of this, and I am saying this because I want everybody to hear it. Do you know how nice it feels for me to know that anybody that you talk to when my name gets brought up that knows me even a little bit thinks I'm great, and only the people that don't? Like, whatever I have in hate or they don't believe the hype or what's he really about, they just don't know me.
Yeah.
And anybody that spent any amount of time, like, listen, there could be moments in time, but I know that the 137 times I've been brought up in different cocktail parties or things like that you've rarely heard from somebody who's interacted with me negative. Right. It's always been positive, and I love that.
Yeah.
And that's 5149, man. You can't be all time if you didn't have results. You can't just say you're one of the greats. I can't say I'm one of the greatest badminton players of all time if I didn't do it. First, you have to do it. But the way he or she does that is by putting themselves in the best position to succeed. I met a kid last night. Business went from $0 to $5 million in sales in 2 minutes. All Instagram, all the shit I spewed. I saved his life. I'm the best. I'm 27, Gary. I'm high energy. I'm just like you. And by the time I'm 30, I'm going to be a billionaire. I stopped him. I said, why are you even doing that? First of all, you're probably not. Because you're 27, you got 5 million, and I don't see anything that gets you to $1 billion in your behavior right now. Number two, you pulled off an unbelievable thing. And you're downplaying your success because you're telling smart people like me you're going to hit $1 billion in 30, and in 3 years I'm going to see you and you're not going to hit $1 billion, and you've set yourself for a loss. And most of all, and this is why I'm telling this story, if you truly are convincing yourself that you're going to hit $1 billion by the time you're 30 and you're at 5 million from 0 at 27 and you're not going to pull it off, all your behavior for the next 36 months is going to be predicated on short-term behavior, not long-term behavior. And the best way to make real money, wealth, not being rich, is to do things for the long term because his life continues at 31. I think that too many people, when somebody says something they don't like to hear, dismiss it as hate and a troll. I read it and question it and then decide, is there any merit to it? And the reason I've been able to evolve is because I don't just default if somebody disagrees with me or makes fun of me that they're wrong. I try to be thoughtful about what are they doing. 9 out of 10 times, it's because they're in a bad place and they're just trying to drag me down. But occasionally there's a point there that I kind of fester in and start subconsciously adjusting what I'm doing. Feedback is important.
One of my favorite Gary Vee answers was when asked what you would do if your daughter, when she turns 14, goes into her room and is filming all her videos and nobody likes it, and she comes out and says, nobody in this world loves me, and your answer was, step your game up, I believe was the answer. Tell us about that.
The market is the market, man. Like, if nobody's watching your stuff, it's not good enough. Everybody thinks their stuff is so good. Every day, Gary, my Instagram's so on fire, it's so awesome. Why is nobody, why am I not gaining followers? Because it's not awesome. Of course, it's just back to the same, you've seen it. You all have friends who be like, look how cute my kid is. And you're like, ugh. It's what we think. We all think our stuff is the best. And I get that. But yeah, that would be my advice, only because that also is liberating. To me, everything's about breathing, right? To me, everything is about take full ownership for everything, and then everything gets easy, because then you're in control. And then learn how to love to lose. For me, my game's simple, right? It's all my fault. So now, I'm not mad at Lindsay or D-Rock, that's it, my fault. I'm empowering them. So it's actually true. My fault. Now, oh, we lost this, or this didn't deliver, or all right, it's an L. Everybody's got losses. It's funny, when UFC started getting popular, I started using it to paint the picture. I'm like, look, business and entrepreneurship is much more UFC than it is boxing. In boxing, a loss is devastating. if you ever, I'm a big boxing fan, like most big fights, like the big fights through the year, almost, it's just unbelievable amounts of 33-0 versus 35-0, right? Just like, that's like what you do. You don't fight anybody and you get to that level. Everybody's got losses in the UFC. And so I think that's how entrepreneurship, that's how life is. We all have losses. And so I like losses. I love adversity. I like the climb. I like the chip on my shoulder. I like when people are like, oh, I knew it. He's not that good. That is like I'm even weirdly scared as I continue to ascend and I'm getting popular and what do you say, the marketing leading, like as people start putting these words in front of my name, I'm like, am I gonna sabotage myself to like recorrect this? Like I like adversity. So yeah, all on me. I enjoy losses. Now all of a sudden, like what? You become completely invincible. I feel invincible. I really genuinely, outside of the health of myself and 20 people, feel 100% invincible as a person. There are gonna be times where naturally, right now I'm in a phase in my health, in working out, especially after I really severely sprained my ankle, where over the last 4 years, I'm probably at the heaviest, I've got the most fat that I've had in 4 years. And for the last 3 months, I've just not been in the same zone that I've been for the last 4 years. I'm dealing with it by not overjudging myself. And so things ebb and flow. Like right now, you're in massively good physical shape. I mean, you just are. I'm impressed.
I did biceps today, so.
I'm impressed. But I'm sure you intuitively understand there'll probably be a chapter where you won't be as tight on your regimen and what have you. The way, I'm very fascinated by the conversation of work ethic, hustle, overworking. I'm fascinated by people's ability to not take on accountability. I never feel like my points of view and my thoughts and my hot takes and my passions and my story are right. I've never believed that in my life. I don't think they're right. I think I enjoy sharing them because I enjoy sharing them. I'm a communicator. There's some selfish needs of communicating, I'm sure, but like I share them, but everybody shares them. This thought that, I think one of the biggest things we need to get more thoughtful about is this question, which is, the answer to the question is by conversating with yourself and trying to develop self-awareness and not look for outside validation. When people email me and say, Gary Vee, I've been hustling 15 hours a day. I'm like, you getting enough rest? You good? Are you pumped? Like with intention, my intention is to be happy. And so I'm not gonna apologize for enjoying my work. Talk about like society wrapped up in vanity, like of social. If you are a high school guy who's a nerd, but you get a blue check from Instagram, your life changed.
You get any girl you want.
The amount of people that send me things like, I will rip my arm off if you can help me get verified on Instagram. Like literally things like, I will sell you my children if you get me verified on, like, I will give you my home.
It's crazy.
And live in a cardboard box. And I'm just like, this is the saddest shit ever. Mm-hmm. And a lot of my content in the last 6 months has been like, please do not get wrapped up in likes and, your rank in the podcast list or checks. Like that is such a death game. You will lose that game. You will start pandering to those results versus actual results.
By creating a great product consistently.
New York Times bestseller list.
Yeah.
I don't pander to that. I don't want to hire the companies that get me on the list. I want to sell more books.
Yeah.
That's the KPI. Impact more people. That's even the bigger KPI. But look, I mean, the world has always traded on, do you know how sad at this point I am when I'm on these I'm not 30, like top 40 influencers or 50 under 50 now, which is the only thing I can,
How old are you now?
42.
Yeah.
So, I think that, I hate it because my feed gets filled up with like, congratulations, or the other people that are on it trying to get me into a conversation. Not because I kudos to them, because I was the most pumped too when I was like 10 most important people in the wine business under 40, like amazing, I get it. But it's, as you get older, you realize how those awards or those like just completely arbitrary things of like an editor liked one of your podcasts and decided, and we all get excited.
Yeah.
Like 6 best podcasts to listen in 2018. You want to be a part of that. You want awareness. Here's what I would say. We've overcorrected a lot of people into caring about that more than the actual results. And so we care more about the facade then we care more about like, look how nice my room, like this, we're in a beautiful room right now, right? You've really done a nice job with this.
Yeah.
I like how you put like the more important people on their own like wall over here. That's
well, they were just bigger photos.
No, you made them bigger. I know you. But here's what's interesting to me. What's interesting is if the concrete and steel under this building is well, this whole thing falls. It didn't matter that you put some like tree.
How pretty it is, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think right now, too many entrepreneurs and personalities and people, 98% of the people that are listening to this podcast right now are caring about the decorations and the curtains and the painting in the room, not the steel and the concrete holding up the room. And I think that that's an important conversation to be had. And I think a lot of what makes me happy and worked for me has been the steel and the concrete. Let's come out of this leaning into humility and gratitude, and that will be the springboard to everything you want. If you can, just be grateful. Yes, you lost your job or your business is not as good, but your grandfather didn't die from Corona. You know, just be grateful. Like grateful for the time you're spending with family now, grateful for the innovation time, the thinking time. I'm sleeping more than ever. I put on a couple pounds, so I gotta be a little bit more careful, but I'm gaining real muscle. I'm starting to really do it out here.
Strong, man. Let's play some ball soon.
I'm gonna dodge you on that. You're too good. But gratitude and humility. Other people I'm watching here are 24 and are regretting already. I'm like, okay, I need to help them think about this because that's a bad framework. Because if you regret, if you're that insecure, if that's your perspective, then you have no right answer. Because if you go and travel and you're 34, whatever you are financially or professionally at 34, you're like, I should have worked more, Argentina. If you know, or if you do the other thing and you work your face off, you'll be like, I ended up just like Gary. All my friends had fun, and yeah, I got $1 million in the bank, but I'm sad because I wish I went to the beach more often. So either you're in that framework or you're not, which is a great way to put a bow on everything I've been telling you. You want to blame other people, the government, Google, knock yourself out. You will go to the grave blaming somebody for something. So I think people have now aspired to be an entrepreneur when they're not, and those are the people that are going through depression, are suicidal, are unhappy because they're in a game that doesn't match them. So when I say that, I'm playing chess. It's never a one size fits all. I want to see what the person says next. I'm looking for the tell. Got it, brother?
Yeah.
I'm like, you know, well, listen, don't overstress. You got patience. Your 20s is a good high risk, high reward time. If it's in you, like if you said that to me, if Gary said to Gary, yo, go to Europe, go this, I'd be like,
right, me too.
Well, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Because when the kid says, yeah, you're right, I'm like,
Okay.
And I couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
And I couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
I had to do it every second. I couldn't breathe. This is when you're a natural purebred, you're in Beyonce, LeBron, Pablo Picasso category. You're an artist.
Yeah.
You're an artist. There was no choice. I'm not doing this for the flex or the gram or the money or the house or the jet I don't want a single thing. I don't want to be part of any exclusive club. I don't need an island. I don't need a house. I need the game.
Yeah.
I need the game. Sales and marketing is mixed, and that means you're actually doing sales. And if marketing is put into a place where it's all upside, because marketing is gray. It is intuitive, right? Yeah. So if the rule is 500,000, I'm making it up. And like, there's no, like at the end of the day, it's like, if you were the head of it for me, I'd be like, it's 500,000 and my team will tell you this. James will definitely tell you this. It's like, I don't give a We'll talk at the end of the year. Explain yourself. But I have no judgment. I'm not booing or cheering along the game. Just tell me when it's 000 and explain to me why we lost 112 to 88 or why we won 112 to 88, and you just hold that person accountable. That's how marketing needs to work. Because that's marketing. You have to be able to do something ridiculous like buy $50,000 worth of bananas and send them to dentists just because it's so ludicrous that they're like, what the You see where I'm going? No, like as silly as what I just said to you, you would be shocked how smart what I just said actually is based on how silly it sounds. The world is busy. Yeah. The way you break through is by breaking patterns. If you're a dentist and you get a banana sent to you in the mail and you wrote a note on it in pen, that's just weird. Weird enough to give you awareness. I do not like negativity. And so in my early years, since I started running companies right from the beginning, my historic vulnerability that I continue to work on and is far great in a better place than it used to be, is in my unbelievable disdain for confrontation and negativity, I wasn't candorous enough and would surprise people when I would fire them. And also created a level of entitlement, which usually led to the firing, because they weren't getting negative feedback, they were just getting positive reinforcement.
And then suddenly something happened.
And they became delusional. No, and unfortunately, it wasn't that suddenly something happened. For the last 3 years, they've always been bad at these three things. I just don't focus on negatives. I focus on positives. They don't hear anything about it. And then they get called into the meeting, probably thinking they're about to get a raise because 4 weeks ago I gave them a high five about something they do well. And then I'm like, hey Jan, hey Rick, we're gonna have to talk about you not being here. And they would be flabbergasted. And I would defend my actions to myself in my 20s and early 30s on they're delusional, how did they not know, couldn't they tell? But a lot of people don't deploy the self-awareness that I was gifted with. It's not, and more importantly, employees always have other side, like everybody, there's always two sides to a story. So over the last 3 or 4 years, and I'll tell you that my brother AJ, who was 22 years old when he became my partner at VaynerMedia 10 years ago, he is far, he's a good balance. My dad is overcritical and only focused on the negative. So I think I naturally was over positive, but then being in the same company with him and a father-son, I almost had to be 100% positive to offset 100% negative, and that's the truth. You need to figure out who you're most upset about losing in front of.
What if it's literally everybody?
That's great. Then you need to start really thinking about creating behavior to make yourself lose more. You basically are in the same place that a slow maturing 11-year-old is who hasn't started swimming yet. The only answer to your question is to jump in the pool. If you were like my younger sister, I would tell you that everything you should do for the next 5 years are things that you're likely gonna lose at until it becomes so numb that it changes your relationship with losing. Hating to lose in the way that you're describing it is completely predicated on not being able to deal with other people's judgment. And that is a tough spot to be in. You gotta reconcile that with, I'm probably the most competitive person I've ever met. Or just in the mix with the other people. So I'm trying to win. I don't want to lose, but I respect the game enough to accept it, and I weirdly get good tingles from it because it excites me to try again. If you actually knew that you would never find out what the alternative was, it would get real good. You know how easy it is for me to make decisions? Super easy. Do you know why? I wouldn't know what the alternative was.
You don't overthink it.
Because it's not practical. I don't have time to dwell on the fact that I passed on Uber twice, which was my best friend of any investment that I made. Every person I invested in was not as close to me as Travis was, and for some miraculous cosmic reason, I passed on Uber twice, which means that my $50,000 investment, which would have been worth $700 million today, didn't happen. And when I tell you I don't think about it at all, here's why. I'm smart and thoughtful enough about knowing how life works. Had I made that investment, everything would be different. Maybe I'd be going to India to give a keynote about that investment because I would have much bigger profile, much different resources, and maybe in that private flight, maybe that flight would have gone down and I would be dead.
So you just don't overthink the other possibilities, because I always find that that's hard.
It's the biggest weakness everyone has.
Yeah.
They're trying to spend time on something that doesn't exist. There is no time machine. Sorry, you picked the wrong school, or sorority, or girlfriend, or major. Sorry. What are we gonna do? We're gonna build a time machine here?
That's your Practical optimism.
Sure is. Because it's both optimistic and way more practical. When are you gonna start talking? What are you waiting for? If you are not communicating, you don't exist. I believe that. If you are not communicating, you do not exist. More importantly, communicate about what you love. What scares me about the long tail of the internet is I know there's somebody sitting in here who's watched every episode of Friends, okay? Deeply loves Friends. Can't get enough in their own mind of debating Rachel and Ross. Loved the show. Watch it every night to go to sleep to. And I know they make $49, $62, $88, $103,000 a year doing something they don't like. And I know that if they started a podcast about Friends every day when they went home, instead of consuming content to escape the fact that they don't like their job, if they created content around the thing they love, that after 24, 36, 48 months, that along could have came Netflix and been a sponsor of that podcast that would allow them to actually leave that job they hate and now be a full-time Friends podcaster. You don't believe that. I understand that. That seems like a far-fetched story to you. The problem is you don't live my life because I wrote a book in 2009 called Crush It that laid this out, and I get to live the best life now where I get 3 to 6 emails a day of people that tell me this exact story. Whether it's about pickles. People like pickles. I do too. I eat pickles like crazy. Star Trek. Esports don't even get me started because I used to push it a lot and people have gone completely and made real careers in that. Just stuff. I just really, really, really hope you hear me today. I'm completely driven by gratitude. Do you know how grateful I am? Like, do you know, what did I do? My parents had sex at this one moment and created me. Like, I'm being serious, I'm just grateful. Like, I have such a good thing going. People like it, I like it, it's so good. But like, what did I do? Like, do you know how lucky I was that I was an immigrant? Do you know how much I'm driven by a chip on my shoulder? Do you know how lucky I got that I was 4'11" when I went into freshman year of high school? Like, all these things went in my favor. I don't know, man, I'm driven by gratitude. Every morning I wake up and I'm just grateful. Grateful, grateful, grateful. I'm 42 years old almost, and thank you. And unfortunately, my grandparents, 3 of my 4 grandparents died before I got to know them. So not only was I born in a communist country where capitalism and entrepreneurship is shit on, I went to the place where it's most on a pedestal. I got the greatest mom in the world. My dad taught me work ethic and my word, which made me not a artist, saved my ass, right? But then on top of everything else, I've had very little death or pain around me and I'm 42 years old. It's unfortunate why that's the case, given the circumstances before, but it's still my reality, right? And then I have a communication style that for some reason, who knew? Don't forget I was 33 years old before I even made a video. Like I never thought this could be real. Like I didn't even cross my mind. I was a businessman. Like watching 20-year-olds that are hungry and thinking about their lives, right? I'm excited because I'm like, bro, you don't have any clue where this might go because you know, at 31 years old, I'm like, maybe I'll make a video on this YouTube thing. Like, you have no idea where it's going. So I'm completely driven by gratitude. I'm so thankful. I'm so grateful. I think one of the reasons I'm successful, and one of the things I try to push a lot of people to think about is, can you love your process? You know, if you're in this, and entrepreneurship is cool now. Yeah. If you're in this. Too cool. Too cool. That's exactly right. If you're in this to flex on Instagram, you're gonna lose. Yeah. And I was doing it when it was in the 80s and 90s in America. Entrepreneurship wasn't a thing.
It was actually, well, in this country, people thought it was something bad.
And in America too.
Like, you're a bad dude.
If you're an entrepreneur, risk. You're actually a loser living off of mommy and daddy. Yeah, it was, you're exactly right. And you and I know this, a lot of the kids don't know. Yeah. Now, it's like being a rapper or an athlete. Yeah. It's incredible for me to watch what's transformed over 30 years. But I was willing to do it because it's all I could do. I listen to athletes, actors and actresses, singers, artists, and in their documentaries, inevitably, they're like, well, I just couldn't do anything else. And as an entrepreneur, that's how I think. What do you have to do to be successful? I think people like us don't understand how, I think in history, people look back at what I figured out as a really important moment, which is, it is remarkable that I don't spend any time being Gary Vee. I figured out my model, which was following me. You're not gonna be able to do that.
Exactly right.
If you take 15 to 20 minutes, and whether we help with that infrastructure, you get an intern, a million different things, but let me tell you how easy it could be. If you text, I'm gonna just use them, Sal, and be like, this week I wanna talk about cryptocurrency. If Sal shows up downstairs at the bar of your building or at the Starbucks, and that 15 minutes is Sal asking you 4 questions, and you answer them, and then that is a LinkedIn post the next day in first person, Sal writing it. That is what I've done. I run a 900 person company. I don't have time to do, what I'm doing is, I'm filming this right now. This meta moment might be how a busy executive said I want it. How a busy executive needs just 15 minutes to be in the content game. This right here is how I figured it out, right? Originally it was the Ask Gary Vee show where I did have to sit down for an hour and interview Hannah and her 6-year, at VaynerMedia, right? Now, I've gone much further down to Daily V where I'm just being filmed because I don't even have that hour to do that YouTube show. Then I did that for 3 years and all of a sudden I'm like, that content's getting stale. And weirdly, in the last month, I'm back to doing a little bit of Ask Gary Vee. I'm fighting for that hour. But the key is, how do you not disrupt yourself? But you need to have something that's a pillar. Do the that got you here. This is when all the new characters come into your life and start telling you how to do it different. I'm getting more ridiculous in my truth than ever, the bigger it's getting. If all these people know, I love when people got voices that are not living it. And they're gonna give you the commodity advice. You've gotta start doing yoga. You gotta start eating granola. Do the that got you here.
Well, the stuff that got me here, roughly speaking, would be like fast food, hard drugs, promiscuous at an alarming rate.
Wrong.
Okay, not those things.
No, those things are great. Great. No, wrong. The things that got you here is you were willing to do that in the face of people telling you not to do that. And so maybe you don't need to eat a fat burger anymore and do whatever the fuck you want, but you need to triple down on your intuition and that's how you got here. Did everybody think it was a great idea to be a BMX website dude?
No,
Good.
that seemed like a very strange idea to many people at the time. Now.
So listen, my man, honestly, this is the time you have to quadruple down on what got you here. The thesis, not the direct actions.
But you don't see people run themselves into the ground. You've never been concerned about that, at least for yourself?
People run themselves into the ground when they start wavering from what they are and they start doing behaviors that don't come natural to them and then they break. And the ones that do, don't. Henry Rollins figured that out. He would have run himself in the ground if he wanted to be Mick Jagger.
Right.
And Mick Jagger would have run himself in the ground if he wanted to be somebody else, a politician. When you do the shit that you don't want to do because you think it's the right thing to do because you graduated to the next spot, you lose. Listen, at the end of the day, vanity metrics, whether that's followers on Instagram, whether that's the jewelry or car you drive, no matter what it is, at the end of the day, underneath all of that, there needs to be something tangible and real. And if you're not asking for business, and more importantly, if you're not selling something you believe in, you're finished. The single reason I think I'm a great salesman, as somebody who hates to ask for a sale, is because I deeply believe in what I'm selling. Whether it's the wine I produce, whether it's a sneaker collaboration I have with K-Swiss, whether it's Vayner. I sit in this, do you know what it feels like to sit in this room and know that VaynerMedia is the best marketing firm in the world? It's empowering. You sell with conviction. And I just watch way too many people either be deeply insecure about what they're selling because deep down they know they have no idea what the fuck they're selling.
I said they don't know what they're selling.
That's right.
Yeah.
Or they're just broken. They just so care about money. They know exactly what they're selling. They just know they're selling. And they're preying on people's fears. And I want to kill those. I started the agency with 45 people that didn't work in the industry. I knew nothing about the industry. I read nothing about the industry. So I started VaynerMedia. I built a creative shop, then I put media in the name. I had both media and creative under one roof and had no idea that it was unique. So we were doing all these unusual things. What it led to is a very large agency that has not played by the industry rules, but has driven business results for its clients. So now we do have 900 people globally. We do have the US, LA and New York offices, and London, and opening up Singapore, and very frankly, feel very confident we're about to get a big scope for the World Cup in Qatar, and that means Middle East, and looking at, South America. So I think it's gonna be interesting to see what happens. I think because of some of the awards we're winning this week, just I'm feeling from the creative class here a little bit of more of a, okay, you can be in the club, and I'm laughing. I'm like, I don't want to be in the club. I don't mind to be in the club, but there's only one club I want to be in, which is, wouldn't you want to be a creative that in real life, when you hang out with your friends, people know what you're talking about? Like, how many more times do people here want to spend 20 years of their life making TVC that when they talk about it, and they're like, the IBM spot, and their friends and relatives are like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And if they do, it's because they tried really hard to find it, right? I think that people want to, I think if you're creative, I think you want it to be seen. I just don't know what else to say. And I think, what Mike and Adam will tell you if you decide to yap with them after this is, after having careers in fancy places doing fancy stuff, it's fun to make. Think about all the ideas that you guys have had that will never see the day of life. Like, you guys are all 12 years away, 6 years away, 4 years away from being the final decision maker to actually see something made. Right now, you're politicking and strategizing on how to convince the two people above you to actually make the thing you believe in. You're not in the creative industry, you're in the internal politicking industry. That's why volume will set this industry free. We have interns from day one in ad school being able to see their thoughts in market from the biggest brands in the world. Literally, we have literally interns already in our company that have had more pieces of content seen by humans than some of the people here. That's real. That's going to play out, I hope, for all of you. I want you to be in a place where you get to be creative for real, instead of working at a bank and fighting for a half-pregnant version of your idea to see the world. And that's why so many of you have to do things on the side, because you can't scratch your itch. There's a really dirty secret in the strategy world of like Bain and McKinsey, where if you really get them drunk, they admit that the actions lead to the strategy, not the other way around. That's my answer to you. How? I make decisions. And then I try to look at my calendar the week ahead and see if any decisions I made 4 weeks earlier that made me think this was a good use of time. Am I able to move something, cut something down? I'm extremely thoughtful about cutting times of meetings. So one of the things I think that really make me successful is understanding a 7-minute meeting is real, and not just making it a 30-minute meeting. But the real reason is because I don't overthink it. I'm operating my business, I'm in it. How do I decide between going to dinner with Kevin Hart because I can and I want to build top of the funnel brand, or do I go take a mid-level client that I'm trying to build a relationship with? It's, you ask every normal person, it seems like those aren't super close, but I can touch the pulse and be like, I'm going to LA 4 more times in the next 3 months. The biggest mistakes I make are the ones of missed opportunities of the things by being crippled by opportunity. When you actually level that all up, my friend, it really is liberating. You will never even come close to making the right decision. I mean it. You just don't know what the alternative would be. People think that there's a right answer. You as an operator of your business, make the right call that feels right at that moment and just move. And people spend all this time and money on trying to think that there's a proper answer. I play on the extremes. I spend as much time as possible on the things that are showing me the most offense, right? However you're doing your customer acquisition to get to a hundo on a product like that, like whether it's Facebook, whether it's brand, and then I spend the amount of time on my biggest vulnerability. Putting my finger in the holes to make sure the boat doesn't sink and building a bigger boat. and nothing in the middle. And knowing that I'm making that judgment at all times, and the second I get new data a week later, I might have to completely change what I thought was right the week before. It's also why I spend a ton of time with my employees. The reason I'm an HR-driven CEO is if you really understand this, both your biggest growth and your biggest vulnerabilities are actually your own team. So I think it's a lack of, it starts with the ability not to overjudge yourself, because that is the liberator of the model I just broke down for you. You guys know Grey Goose? The guy who invented that as an entrepreneur invented it at 78. Sidney Frank, 78 years old. You know? Life is like sports. Like, one of the great moments of my life with AJ is the Monday Night Miracle at the Meadowlands with the Jets Dolphins. That was 30-7 in the fourth quarter. And they won. They came all the way back. My cousin left, went home to Queens, went to sleep. I called him when they tied it at 30 and said, can you believe that? He's already sleeping. He left that game and was already sleeping in Queens. I was like, what are you talking about? Hung up. And then the Dolphins scored and made it 37-30. And we blamed Bobby for waking up. But like, that's life. Like, you could do everything wrong. Have every dream you've ever had get blame it on other people, the girl, that injury, coach it up, blame everybody, have everything go wrong, be 57 years old, and still have 40 years to make it right. It's crazy, honestly. Like, if there was some crazy new drug that I could like inject in you that gave you perspective of time, you guys too, that's the drug I would give you. Straight up. It makes you optimistic. People are sitting here dwelling already. Dwelling already. Shouldn't have come to Rutgers. Knew it. Of course there's people thinking that. Like, that's just real life. Dwelling already, haven't even started. Man, that's what I want to change. The only thing that you can do wrong is not being yourself. I see a lot of people scared to actually be themselves because they're scared who's watching. And they, like, I hate looking at all your LinkedIn accounts. You've got like a suit and tie, looking all professional. Like, you think something bad's gonna happen if you're normal. I look like a mess up here. I'm wearing a Tierra Whack sweatshirt. Like, the results always win. And I think a lot of people hold back their natural self. The market doesn't care in the end. Somebody may judge you, but the market doesn't care. Everybody's got so much pressure to like have it figured out when they come out of school. Like, it's time to be real and real life and all that. It's stupid. 22 to 30 should be experimenting. Travel, if you like, and people are like, well, I don't have money. I'm like, you can still travel. You can get a plane ticket. You can take a bus, like, do. So I think you're not gonna find what you like. It's like food. I'm always fascinated by oysters. The amount of people that think they hate oysters, even though they've never had one, I see so many people living life that way. You don't know your passion because you haven't done it, Billy. I learn from so much doing. That's why my data is so clean. It's why I'm an innovator. It's why I'm fast. It's why a lot of good things happen for me, because I realized just the doing is actually more efficient than the thinking about it. Somebody said something really funny to me once, and it was like the dig of this version, and it's a really funny conversation. He was talking about VaynerMedia at the time. This was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. He said, you know, Gary, I gotta tell you, I love your company, but I gotta take a little bit of a knock on you. He was trying to set it up. I'm like, okay, what is it? He goes, where I think you need to be more thoughtful, Gary, is I have a feeling though that you might run through that glass panel and sit with us when you could have just opened the door. And I said, yeah, but which one was cooler? The internet's here. It's a complete land grab. There's unlimited opportunity. Nobody cares where you started. Nobody's stopping you. There's nobody that's got to take your resume. There's no grades that matter. None of it. What matters is, are you willing to hustle? And how bad do you want it? And are you willing to live a life where you're not letting other people judge you, so then you're not pandering to it?
What is one piece of feedback you're most curious
The
to get?
truth.
Yeah, but about what?
Whatever the hell is in front of them. Running an operation is not a education or philosophical exercise. What do I want? I want to know exactly what is an issue operationally right this second to you from your perspective in you running your world? And how can I help?
On your leadership, what are you most curious about?
The reverse of that coin. What can I do to put you in the best position to succeed? Are you looking to talk to me more often? Are you talking to me less? Do you need some leeway with your financial P&L? Do you need me to rah-rah the troops? Do you want me to go talk to the most senior client because the client that you work with, which is the second most senior client, is giving you a very difficult time? I am in the ambulance, firefighting, emergency doctor, bat phone business. I am only built to act in helping for you to succeed within this framework. The things we said no to that were actually the trigger to a hotter, to a streak, to a heater, that we said, I hope that heaven is where it shows you what life would have been based on choices. I love that I didn't go to some night where at night would have been these two people that would have made this deal with me. Like, I love knowing that like momentum is based on choice, that I've missed momentum many times in my life, and that I've gotten momentum many times in my life. And I love that part of the game actually, which is like decisions actually matter. And sometimes when you have the humility to go to a thing that doesn't seem right, you get something that triggers a domino. And sometimes when you go to something, you're like, I mean, I remember sitting down, there's one meeting I remember very vividly with Howard Schultz. I had a meeting with Howard Schultz to kind of just, I was getting hot, getting in this, and like I got connected. I remember sitting 4 minutes before it. I'm like, I'm about to walk in here and I'm about to blow this dude's face off and it's going to be a foundational thing. I walked in, we had a 15-minute meeting, 20-minute meeting, and nothing's happened. And I didn't feel like I had an off day. I felt like I gave it, but it didn't click. Whereas when I went to go see Jimmy Iovine, for this meeting, I'm like, I'm gonna blow his face off. Within 3 minutes, he's like, you're next Simon Cowell. And he casted me in the Apple show, Planet of the Apps, with will.i.am, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Jessica Alba. And if that show actually got seen, unfortunately, it was before all the OTT stuff and the way TV, like that would have been right. And that would have been one of the moments. So, the reality is that,
wow.
Like I love that kind of shit. And then I'm trying to think of like something good where like, who'd I meet randomly? Like I'm trying to think of a real logical thing. Well, I took a meeting with the Jets president at a bagel store because he wanted to sell me a skybox. I told him about where the world was going. We became great friends. That's Matt Higgins, who's on Shark Tank, who's Steve Ross's right hand. That led to him leaving the Jets years later, going to Steve Ross and Dolphins. That became the gentleman who bought a piece of my company. And like that bagel meeting became a monster meeting for me, and I didn't know who Matt Higgins was going into it. So I love chance, I love momentum, and I love what starts momentum. That's where I just took this.
Yeah.
I agree more than to remind everybody right now, say yes. One thing that I hate about people that haven't achieved anything and people that have achieved everything, they overvalue their time. And it's a tricky one. If you haven't gotten there yet, people are like, Gary, I'm not doing that pro bono work. I should be compensated. I'm like, bro, your work's worth nothing. Like there's 700,000 video makers that I can tweet right now. Like, sorry, like when your work's not worth anything, like no humility. And then again, no humility. When people get fancy, I take so many small meetings. I do so many things like tea with Gary Vee in the morning during this COVID crisis to like just help. And once every 8,000 times, it helps me. Where you end up in your career is going to be predicated on many things, and talent is one of them. Your ambition is another, circumstance. All of us, if we have a tragic event, check out. Right. Like there's a million variables in life, but take away luck. Like, do you know that I do not play the lottery because I'm scared to win?
You're scared to win?
I do not play the lottery because I'm scared to win, because then everybody will say that it was the lottery ticket that enabled me to do the things I'm planning on doing the next 50 years. No entrepreneur can be successful with somebody who is not independent. None. There's no entrepreneur.
Partner.
That's right. Yeah. No Sally, if her husband Rick is not independent and can't keep himself busy and isn't about his life, she can't do what she needs to do because he's going to be pulling her at all times and making her feel guilty for taking that extra business trip, for looking at the phone during dinner. And so you need, if you're a true bred entrepreneur, an obsessed entrepreneur, and what I mean by that is, I believe, I know your audience, I know mine, I believe 87% of the people listening right now are in it for the money. They're in it for the short term, get the money, go on the nice vacations, right? Buy the nice car. If you're part of the 13% that I'm a part of, which is you would die tomorrow if somebody said you couldn't play. I would much rather make $100,000 a year, and I proved this. This is what I did in my, from 22 to 34, I made 150, 130, 167, $49,000 a year building my dad's business for him. I never got upset that I had no equity. I don't have resentment that I left that business at 34 with nothing. Even when people say to me, don't listen to Gary, his daddy put him on or gave him the business, when I know the true story is, I didn't get anything. I just built a monster business for my dad in my best years of my youth and then left and started over, right? I mean, VaynerMedia started with me getting a client to pay, because I had no money to pay me and AJ or anybody else. For the 13% who are listening, they get it, which is like, look, no question, I think a lot of people are like bullshit if they don't know me, but if you know me, make $14 million a year, right? And not be able to play anymore, passive income. Make $200,000 a year and get able to play, I'm not even close. It's $200,000 and play. I'll suffocate.
You mean
I'm like a fish out of water if I'm not building a business. Every moment of my life since 1987 has been unbelievably passionately 98% of my human energy against the notion of either my family or building the business that's in my hands at the time. Baseball cards, liquor store, you know, my personal brand, VaynerMedia, the investments I've made, selling a book. I'm always in project mode operating. From the day I started working, I've been running a company, becoming Gary V and all that stuff. There's never been a day where Gary V has been my business. Every day since May of 1998, I've been running Wine Library or VaynerMedia, all of them. Every single day in continuum. So yeah, I mean, to me, if you're one of those 13%, for all the 13% that are listening, if you're still not married, or by the way, if you're married, you may want to consider divorce. I'm being really serious here, because you're not doing yourself a favor and you're not doing your partner a favor. If you are not blindly supported, you will suffocate and die. It will not work. It just will not work. I think for some people, the come up's easier and the level up's harder. For other people, it's the reverse. For me, you know what? It's gonna be a fun recall. The same guy who works the room with the same level of humility and deep passion to meet people and help them and help himself if serendipitously he stumbles into an opportunity, who loves to co-sign and watch people shine and like, why not? Who likes to like add to that, you know, is the same guy today that was 7 years ago, and that's the same with me with Wine Techs, Tops. Like, I'm pretty much navigating the same exact business blueprint that got me here, and I'm a more mature version. I'm in the subtleties much better than I used to be, but at its core, like a lot of times you hear the saying, you know, what got you here is what you need to double down on, and then you hear contradictions like, you gotta change up now that you're at the next level. I think people make those things absolute. Here's how I see it. I'm tripling down on what got me here, but I'm maturing and evolving around the edges and changing certain things, more mature, more thoughtful, not making the same mistakes, experienced Gary should be better than rookie Gary. Unless it's complete death to me and my 17 people that I give a shit about, like everything else is super secondary. And let me tell you something, if you actually get into that mindset, it gets real good. Like everybody like makes these big deals out of things that just don't matter. It's perspective. You know, my selfishness comes from my selflessness. Like it's what makes me feel good. I see it in my mother. My mom is the epicenter to every single person in her life. Her sister-in-law, her cousins, aunts, everybody goes to her. That's her comfort zone. Me too. Ask Gary V. Like this is my comfort zone. Like I like this. Like I hate when people are like, what can I do for you? Like I say nothing. I don't want anything. I hate that feeling. I went into my family business because I felt like I owed it to like pay them back. Those are my parents. So if that's what I feel about them, what do you think I think about everybody else? My big thing is this. You can have anything you want, first of all, because who am I or who's anybody else? Do you, comma, just ask yourself why. Are you so insecure that you need the logo of the BMW or the table at a club, or what? Do you need that for affirmation of others, or do you actually enjoy the taste of alcohol, the speed of a car? Yesterday, I forced somebody to leave the media team and now work in project management, a very junior employee. She's been with us for 18, 24 months. I, from the tippy top, all the way down to the London office on the micro media team, demanded, as a dictator, to move her from media to project management on two things. One, she was not having a good relationship with her managers, and it was neither of their faults after I investigated personally. And two, through the series of her communicating with me, I thought that she had tremendous organizational skills. And I saw her yesterday and she was so happy. I'm a CEO who happens to also have tens of millions of followers on social media, does public speaking, I'm here for things like this. I'm stretched incredibly thin, and yet I was able to execute against that. And this is not me saying it for everybody who's listening to think I'm good or it speaks to intent. Either, let me save everybody a lot of time on this incredible mission that this podcast is on. Either a company is about its people or a company is about money. Any company that is publicly traded or has a board that has control over the CEO, she or he has to pander to something outside of their employees. Independence, whether in the micro or at massive scale, at least gives you the chance to be employee-centric.
So how did you communicate that to her, and how did she receive it?
Well, it was in the conversations I was having to her about her not being happy, and then also double checking and hearing from her managers that maybe it's her fault, was data I was collecting. And then I came over to the top with HR and finance and just requested the move. So I didn't even communicate to her that I was doing the move. It just happened. When I saw her, I'm not sure she knows how much or how little I had to do with it. And I'm not really in the business of getting stars on my shirt, but I'm really happy about it. And whether it works out or not, I have no idea. But the moral of the story for everybody, one more time, especially if you're listening right now and you have the power. You know, something I said yesterday to the London office was everything at VaynerMedia is my fault. There's 1,000 things wrong right now. There's 8 to 80 people that are responsible for that, but at the end of the day, I hired and empowered those 8 to 80. If you are lucky enough to have control, and you're listening right now, and if you're listening to this, you care about the things that we care about, please look yourself in the mirror and realize you're the one that has the ability to make the change that you ideologically believe in. I don't like college for the value prop for a big percentage of people. I think college works for, somebody left a comment yesterday on my Instagram that like, Gary Vee, you convinced me to stay in school. And I was pumped. And I was like, yes, this kid is hearing me. I'm not in college, I'm cheerleading for self-awareness. There's no such thing as one thing works for everyone. And one of the scariest things in American society, one of the scariest things is parents putting pressure on kids to go to school to make the parent feel good and making the kid take on debt for that when the kid doesn't feel like they want to do that. And then they come out the other side and they literally spend the next 15 years trying to reconcile that debt. That's why you have a lot of unhappy people. And then what that means is then they go, yay, I'm gonna vote for the person that's gonna wipe out college debt, right? Because that's your short-term issue, just like other people vote to the Republican side on their short-term issue, which then leads to accountability issues, which leads into people like, Google needs to take care of me. This is how the machines are gonna win. You understand that, right? I don't want the machines to win. I want all of you to think every single thing is your fault without judging yourself into depression. Which, you know, everything's your fault, that's a great thing, means you're in control, let's go.
I'm curious now, how do you find the balance between being a great husband, between being a great father, having great health, and building a great empire? And what do you feel like you could improve more in at this season of life?
I think back to extremism, right? Like the extreme, which I use, all of it can be better and all of it is just great. I think, here's a good place to go with this. Let's really bring value. So you can go back, 4 years ago and listen to like how I think about extremism going hard and then vacationing hard, and it's all there. I think what this has evolved into is something a little bit deeper and more important that I hope really brings somebody value right now, which is stop beating yourself up and stop judging yourself. We all go through chapters, right? Like sometimes you're super in love with your partner and like that's all you can obsess about. It feels like you've been through that chapter recently. Like other times you're super into your profession because you got a new initiative and you got to go. It's another baby. Sometimes it's an actual baby. And by the way, for some people, the first 2 years are actually super boring because the baby does nothing. And it's okay to not be like blown away and spending every second. On the flip side, if you just can't believe this little miracle and you need to like work out, like I think this comes down to judgment. Stop beating yourself up. There is not even a close framework for what's right. Everyone's balance is massively individual. This company is a complete and utter reflection of the way I was parented and the circumstances in which I was parented. 100%. I think that this company is optimistically practical. So, and that's uniquely what I can bring to the table in this company. So this company is extremely young and coastal, which means it's unbelievably socially liberal, which is incredible because I am as well, but that also leads to vulnerability. And so my practicality and immigrant upbringing and like merit-based infrastructure helps us a lot when the most senior leaders do things that are currently popular but are unbelievably scary to me of what that can lead to a month later. I mean, Slack at VaynerMedia is like dark Reddit. Like there's a lot of good, but there's plenty of dark. And like, that's just the nature of what happens, especially when what's happening outside the four walls of VaynerMedia is happening in our society, which is activating people in a completely different way than a decade ago or 2 decades ago or 2 decades from today. And so, yes, I feel like I'm very fortunate to be the human that I am during this time because I think I have practical optimism. There's a really interesting thing that an entrepreneur, that she or he needs to be able to manage a lot of things, which is, I'll use this analogy, TD. This is the easiest way I can put it. Some people really just want to juggle 3 balls and they do it and nothing falls and they're like, look, and I'm like, cool, that's amazing. I'm going to juggle 25 plates. 9 of them are going to break, right? But I'm 16 to your 3. Yep. And because I actually don't care about judgment, because the reason a lot of people don't do things is, look, empathy, which is a wine brand that I launched. I come from the wine business. I'm building a machine that's building brands. And if empathy fails, that's like a big L. And like could really like slow me down if somebody's thoughtfully looking at me, but I'm okay with that L. And I think what you need to do is have a stomach to be able to have losses.
Have you had any losses?
Plenty.
Okay.
When we started VaynerMedia, I also launched 2 other companies, Corked and Forest. A lot of things I invest in, incubate. Here's where things.
Failure is part of the game.
It has to be.
And here's where people need clarity on this: micro failures.
Right.
Right. Not the major. Yeah. Not the major.
And this is where people get confused. I lose millions over the last 10 years of my career, I've probably lost millions of dollars every year on a failure, but nothing.
You're making me feel real good right now, by the way.
But the reason I'm making you feel good, and I don't have the details on where you're going with that, is, but it didn't put you out of business. It didn't, you didn't have to go and be Rocky 5 and go back to like I think that when it's all said and done, and we've been talking a lot about legacy, that when it's all said and done, you've achieved greatness when, even though all along the way, there was a narrative of, he's a or he'll never pull it off, or what has he ever really done? Greatness is when you are on that last day, both the fans and the non-fans have to accept and acknowledge the results. Hunger is a really interesting thing. You know, hunger is an interesting thing because when you're hungry, when you get an opportunity, you tend to overgorge.
When I think back, is like
real quick on this.
Yeah.
It's a really important analogy that I've thought about, but I've never said out loud. When you're hungry and you get to a buffet, you throw up. And so when people are hungry for success and they get in front of me or anybody else or an opportunity, they overeat.
Truth.
I know.
It's fast.
And I know you get it.
I do get it.
And I think that you're eating a couple less plates now at your at-bats, and that's why things are happening. Man, I have definitely suffocated excuses better than a lot of people, which is really the biggest reason so many people who are listening right now are not winning. They are surrounded by people that are willing to accept their excuses on one very interesting insight. It's because those people don't give a f***. Your friends and your family are letting you get away with your excuses because they don't care. I weirdly don't know you and I care, and let me tell you how to fix this. Get your excuses out of your mouth. What's super interesting is, and those people that are CFOs and CEOs and COOs, they think that's the magic. I always laugh at them. I'm like, you're a commodity.
Right.
There's millions of you. That's math. That's easy to understand. I always say, if you want to be an anomaly, you have to act like one. Like people want all these special things to happen, but then they're acting like everybody else. And that gets into the Saturdays in your 20s, like, or just like taking risks or things of that nature. Like, I totally agree with you. I think about it as, you know that picture where like it looks like two people kissing or it looks like a glass of champagne? Like I just basically think at this point in my business life, the world sees the glass of champagne and I see the two people kissing. Like I just can see it. Like I know what's coming. I think that people need to try to be self-aware about what makes them happy and doesn't make them happy. Right now, I view social media as a mirror. I think what people are putting out is an incredible indicator of what's inside of them. So right now there's a lot of political anxiety. There's a lot of ideological anxiety. And so what we're seeing is a lot of judgment. You know, I think, you know, the early days, especially when you and I were on it, like there was a lot of Nirvana early users. It was very soft. I think you are seeing a different version of that today. But that is, you know, getting off of social is no different than stop watching CNN or Fox every night or reading the Journal or the Times. We consume as animals. And I think if one feels overwhelmed, they should stop consuming. But I don't put social media consumption in a very different place than the films and music and books that one reads. Like the collective replies of people's angst is no different than Kurt Cobain's singular angst, other than it's a collective versus a singular. And so I think it's great. And like when people are like, oh, like what are you gonna think about that? I'm like, I don't care about social media. I really don't. I care about humans communicating with each other. I'm fascinated by communication, and I'm fascinated that we now have a collective ability to communicate at a scale that we've never seen before. And I think right now people are focusing on the downside of that, and I think we're forgetting the upside of it. There's so much love and greatness going on every day. I think humans find what they're looking for. If you're signing into Twitter to find a fight, or to find somebody to fight with, or to see some negativity, you're gonna find it. I think if you go to Twitter or Instagram to find happiness and positivity, it's there at scale. That's just karma is practical. I love how people think karma is like this weird thing. Doing good for other people is a good strategy. Like it's like, you know, I've been like trying to forget, I'm like, why does this thing even exist? It's actually the most common sense thing of all time. Why does karma seem weird? The f is karma? Like, wait a minute, so you're telling me like, if you do lots of good things, that weirdly good things happen to you? Yeah, that seems like common sense. Once in a blue moon, I come up with very tangible advice. So I've been talking a lot about leaving comments in people's Instagram posts, but not like follow me or like just to game it. No, take the out. You want to grow everyone's like, how do I grow? I'm like, there's a way. It's called the thank you economy. Quietly go in like nice and calmly. Like if you're a photographer, go to Nick's page. He's got legit. He takes a photo of some pretty person, boy or girl. He's very good at that in some beautiful setting, and like look at it and then leave a comment that's meaningful. Like, hey Nick, you know, are you using this filter? Or I noticed what you did with the light there. Like something that means something, not like cool or lit. You know, like you're not leaving the comment for the sake of leaving the comment. You're taking the actual hour and a half to like look, add something of value. You do that on 90 different, the way I came up with it was leave your 2 cents, in a comment, leaving your 2 cents, go take 9 hashtags that are relevant to your business, and then go to 10 accounts or 10 hashtags, top 9. It used to be the top now.
Right.
Now it's just random 9.
Yeah.
So pick 10 hashtags, the random 9, that's 90, leave 2 cents. Now you've left $1.80 for the day.
Yeah.
Watching the last 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks of people like, because it's funny, right? People are buying likes and comments. People are like trying to do dumb shit, give away iPads or Yeezys or Off-Whites to get followers, or you can actually work for an hour,
Add value.
know your craft, and act like Nick. I'm actually looking at it like, do you know what would happen because he actually knows his craft if he actually spent 3 hours a day? 3 hours is a lot of time.
It's a lot of time.
And if he gave a and I don't think he should or shouldn't,
Right.
but if he gave a the fact that if he spent 3 hours looking at 20 hashtags in photography because he's crafted and skilled and gifted, and went to those people's photos and said that I would never understand. I'd just be like, nice thong, or like, nice muscles, or like, cool coconuts. Like, but if he said like, oh, I see what you did there off the reflection horizon,
Right.
well, that matters because like people see that you're leaving something meaningful, right? For me, stumbling into the talent, the natural talent, that very nice bio, what I realized from having, and this might sound very interesting and it took me a long time to realize it, the reason I had 8 lemonade stands, and I did, the reason I had 8 lemonade stands as a child, which is absurd and very unique, is on a stage like this actually 5 years ago, I'm giving the story, I used to give my bio more, and I actually remembered for the first time, why was I doing that? Because I was starting to get a little bit upset with myself. Was I lazy and just wanted my friends to work? But what I was actually doing as a 6-year-old kid, as a 6-year-old child, I was walking, the 1980s in America was much more safe. So I was walking about in the neighborhood and I was looking at the cars driving and trying to figure out where to put my lemonade stand sign on which tree or which post of a sign. And basically 37 years later, right here, right now, I'm still doing the same thing. I've been chasing the attention of human beings to figure out where they're paying attention. And then I spend the rest of my time trying to make a sign that's going to make them stop and buy my lemonade.
Would you borrow money?
Well, I borrow money now because there's no interest on it.
Huh?
Money's great right now. The problem is it's the same old game, right? Which is it's the same thing around the lottery. It's the same thing about all these things. It's tough for us, and I'm sure you deal with this.
Yeah.
I struggle with giving advice because I need more context. If you're an idiot, you shouldn't borrow money because you're gonna go way worse. But
what's the difference? You're gonna be broke either way. You're an idiot. Why not borrow the money?
So look, it depends on how you borrow money. Here, let me give you a real good idiot play. Student loans.
Yeah.
That's the most idiot.
Yeah.
Because that you can't get out of.
That's one of my questions. Okay,
Go ahead.
college.
Go ahead. College, hate it.
Hate it, right?
Or entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
If you need
How much money will you make this year?
I will make
What are you gonna pay taxes on? What number will you pay taxes on?
probably 17.
Yeah. Okay. 17 million, right? He's gonna make 17 million. Is your best year? It's gonna be your best year.
Yes.
So, and he's telling you don't go to college. Did you finish?
Yes, but I went to Mount Ida College.
Yeah, I went to McNeese State University.
This is how.
If you give them
This is
some
how.
money,
By the way,
they'll
this is how
put
I
you in
got.
the
This is how I
alumni.
got to Mount Ida College. I got a postcard in the mail in March of my senior year of high school, and my mom finally woke up and realized she didn't know the process.
Yeah.
She was an immigrant, and she's like, "You're going to college," and I'm like, "No, Mom, I didn't. I didn't apply for anything." She's like, "You're going to college." I'm like, "Crap, all right." And then a postcard came.
Yeah.
I filled it out, and that's how I went to Mount Ida College.
Yeah. What'd you study there?
Madden 94. There's only offense and defense. There's only the force and the dark side, right? And I think that right now a lot of people are choosing to be driven by fear and negativity without realizing it. And so if you're listening right now, my biggest thing is start leaning into a little bit more of optimism and positivity. I think where it overcorrects is when it goes into delusion, and that's when you start creating entitlement. And that is the tightrope that I've been talking about, thinking about, watching And I create entitlement a lot of times because I like positivity. And it took me a little while, maybe 20 or 30 years, 20 years of operating and managing and parenting and being like, okay, I can see this, but I'm a product of not having entitlement.
What do you think? You talk a lot about, delayed gratification, and there's time, and everyone has a lot of time, and people are wanting things right now. What do you think, even with that mentality, I know that you would love to get results, bigger results all the time with what you're doing. If you sell 100,000 books,
right,
you would like to sell 200,000 books right now. And
that's exactly right.
Right? What?
Micro, macro.
Yes, exactly.
That's it.
But what do you think you're going to need to do to step into getting faster results in the micro and the macro? What would take you to the next level quicker?
I think what takes everybody to the next level is cutting out dumb. Like if you really look at anything, it's always cutting. That's why Jack Welch had such a great career. He was so right in when it was a revolutionary thought of cut your bottom 10% of your staff each year. But it's right. I mean, no question, whether in your training, in your business, in your friendships, do you understand that if every person who's listening right now started to weed off the friend that is bringing the least value, and I mean they're a bad influence, they're bad mojo, they're bad, bad. I mean, they're just negative. They're a negative person, so they're dragging you down. They're selfish. They have bad habits, like a drug addiction or something. And you don't want to leave them. I want to make sure people right. When they hear me say this, oh, you get rid of your friend. No, just if you audit your circle of who you spend time with, if you just spent less time with something that is broken, and you added one person that was incredibly valuable, your life would be a lot better. That's just real.
What is the impact that you want to have on the world?
So I would say this is my current POV, because I think it's actually important that I have a different answer for this at 50 and 60, because you're going to adjust to the reality. I'll give you a good example. If something terrible happens in my life and it's disease-based, or it's because some kid was texting while he was driving and hit my dad, those will become things that I want to leave a legacy about, because that's just how we act as humans, right? They become your truths. But no question, this will never go away. I want to do the following. I'm fascinated by the same thing that attracts so many of millions of people to people that are selling. Those same people are attracted to me. And what I want to do is suffocate out all those other people and become the alpha of that entire world of people that are hoping and are desperate to look at me. And what I want to do is inspire 2 14-year-old girls in Kansas City right now to build $1 billion company on having a bunch of employees hugging each other in the halls. I think that Steve Jobs came along, became an icon, but the sad part of that narrative was he did not treat his employees well. He became an icon, and the narrative became he got the most out of people by being a jerk, and that became romanticized. And a lot of people in Silicon Valley today run companies where they're mean because they think that's the right thing to do because they put Steve Jobs on a pedestal. I want my pedestal moment. I want to become that big, and what I want to come from that is that kids that aren't even born today think that they can build a $5 billion company and be a great guy or a great gal. I want to build the biggest building in town ever by just building the biggest building in town, while I think most people try to tear down everybody else's building. So I think positivity and good is practical advice to building an empire, and I want to be the poster child of the person that built the biggest, baddest empire and did it by being a good dude along the way. And not everybody's gonna be happy about everything I did, but if it's 97% of people talking good behind your back, that's a real legacy. And I wanna do it in a pop culture way. I'm gonna do it anyway. People have done that before. Just so you know, there's plenty of people. Warren Buffett's a really good dude. Like, there's plenty of people that have done that. There's a difference. I wanna do it and I wanna be a rock star, right? Like, and that's where you influence people. Like, you know, like I wanna do it, but I also wanna be the most popular. And so then that person's like, oh, I wanna be him, so I guess I'll be nice. Like, I wanna literally take people who have DNA that's kind of nice and make them more nice because they think that's how I became big. So I basically wanna trick the business world into becoming kinder. When you started trying to care towards me, as your career evolved over the last 9 years, the first 4 times that you cared, I thought this is the setup for the other thing.
The ask or something, right?
Because that's what we as humans think. That is the environment we live in. I'm sure that's what people feel about me. The fact that you, look, I think here's the thing. Actually, let me say this about you as well. This is a good topic. I want to pay forward at all costs. I want to give, right? Jab, 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 right hook.
Right.
Like if I had it my way, that book would have been called jab, 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 right hook. I think the thing that you have, that I have, and this is our kinship and no question speaks to our success, is we're very willing to give.
Yeah.
We're not scared to ask for something in return, but we are not crippled. We don't overreact to somebody coming through, and we're not crippled when they don't.
Right.
I'll give you a great example for everybody listening. When School of Greatness came out, you emailed, you reached out, I was able to buy a bunch of books, we did all the right things. When Mask came out, this feels like 3 months ago?
Yeah.
I remember this clearly because I kept getting scared that I was f***ing up because you reached out, you're like, this is coming. But I had some shit going on, just like business stuff.
You were really busy too
I was
and
just,
everything,
no, but I was just really between personal life and business. And I just remember because I remember this because I was like, oh shit, I gotta, it wasn't notes. I'm like, oh, I gotta reach out to him. And then I hit you up and I was like, dude, where are you? You're like, dude, I was in New York 4 days ago. But you know what's interesting to me? Because that's how I play. Sometimes people will come through, sometimes they don't. Right. Giving with expectation is a devastatingly bad idea that 99% of people do. The amount of money people are trying to replicate my model, but are overspending on the tech or the lighting or the post-production, that's not gonna work. If you're running a motorboat, you don't fill it the same way you fill a cruise ship. It's gonna sink, and that's what people are doing. They're overthinking, and then that led to the next part, which is don't overthink your content. Because that wasn't the physical manifestation, it was the mental manifestation. You know how many owners and CEOs jump in and look at their Instagram account and they're like, I don't like that picture, and it breaks the whole machine? That's, so all these things.
Can you try and narrow down what is the number one driver of engagement in the workplace?
The ability to listen. The number one driver of engagement is the macro and then the individual employees that make up the company's ability to actually listen. I really...
So, cultivating our ability to listen
as
employees, as managers, is a very important focus going forward for you and your organization.
It's the only thing I think about. Mm-hmm. If you think about just to create some levels of clarity here for everybody, the ability to engage and be engaged and things of that nature completely start with the seed of being heard. Somebody being heard is completely different than somebody who feels they're not heard.
That's also what research shows.
Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Good. That makes me feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
To be seen and to have the opportunity or possibility to influence
the outcome.
Your situation so that you're not trapped.
Nothing makes me more excited than when a junior employee comes, gives a recommendation, and then 7 months later it actually becomes true and they reach out to me and they never think it was them. Hey Gary, Sarah Thompson here. We met 7 months ago. Just saw the announcement or just saw this or this just happened. I'm sure it wasn't me and you probably don't remember that I asked you, but I'm so glad it's happening. And then me on a flight at 1:30 in the morning, dear Sarah, it happened because you walked into my office, where I heard you, I thought you might be right, I investigated, we did it, da-da-da-da-da-da. It's one of my favorite parts of my job. I'm real passionate about patience. I think the biggest vulnerability to this room, including the coaches and us old guys, is patience. I wish the coaches over here knew how young they were. Watching 30, 40, 50-year-olds completely confused by the context of time is one of the most fascinating things I see in our society. People always come up to me and they're like, Gary, when are you gonna buy the jets? And I'm like, 25 years. And they get sad as they think they want me to have it tomorrow. And I'm like, I just don't build wealth like that. I'm just one brick at a time. I'm not gambling out here or hoping or dreaming. I already f***ed up by passing on Uber twice in the angel round. That would have made me my billion. So I missed that shot. So the reality is that I'm just building blocks. And so, you know, whether you deploy this, what I'm talking about right now, to like how you're thinking about cracking the starting lineup, or why you're pissed you're on special teams but you should be starting, or whatever bullshit excuses you come up with in your own head, the reality is patience as an overlay is remarkably important. The reason so many things are easy for me is I don't give a. He's using my signature on a thing. I have no idea what he's talking about. My signature is my most important IP. And I don't give because I like him, and fine, Nate did something, want to sell 5 bottles, 15 cases, 40 cases. But do you know how many people would freak the fuck out with that?
Yeah.
So it just matters. The answer is very individual. You know? Yeah. There's most of the things I do, most people don't agree with. Most of the things I do, most people don't agree with, because I'm unique in my lack of interest in short-term money. And I'm now starting to debate even money in itself. I just like my process. One thing I love about athletes is if they get to the right place mentally, they're in a place where they're always ready to get booed. I genuinely think the reason I'm super successful is because I got booed my whole life. I was an immigrant, couldn't speak English, got booed. I was a terrible student, a couple miles away from here, got booed, right? I was small as and not good enough at sports, got booed. I got booed at everything, which made me a great entrepreneur because I'm ready to get booed. I love being booed. I love L's. The reason I love the Jets and Knicks so much is they haven't won. I grew up a huge Yankees and Rangers fan. As soon as they won a title, I was out. I'm about to climb. I love losses. I love pain. I'm serious, I love it.
In your view, how aware are the average business leaders of the correlation between employee engagement and profitability?
Non-existent. Because CFOs are too literal, an Excel sheet, and 90%, if not 99%, are not deploying emotional intelligence above their financial intelligence, and they are spreadsheet basics. And
do we need new KPIs?
Yes.
How do we clarify this correlation? Because it is there, research shows it's there, you've seen it, others have seen it. Research
oftentimes and reporting doesn't penetrate a cliche CFO. You know, no matter what you and I come and talk from personal experience. Somebody else comes from an academic point of view on this. Shows, dear CFO, you are wasting $4.9 million a year of people sitting there and crying and not working. And if you had better engagement, I know that to be true in my bones. In my bones, I know that a proper culture creates a scenario where people have better output in the time that they deploy. I know that as intuitive human. But now let's have some empathy in the other direction. If you're the CFO of Ericsson and you have to report numbers, and you have to report numbers every 90 days, it gets very hard for you to make the investment. Let's play this out. Okay, so Rick and Susan hear us and they deploy, they're bought in, they believe in you and I. What happens next? Well, you have to start putting in money to put into programs. You have to put in money to put into human beings that rev up the culture. All of a sudden, we asked the CFO, who's looking every 90 days on a whim in their mind, because it's not mathematically quantitatable no matter what our reports show, they have to pour money into this for the hope that later it pays dividends.
It's called investment.
I've heard. People don't invest.
Should I try to double or triple down on my strengths within each business as far as scheduling time and doing my thing?
You personally?
Yes.
100%.
Okay.
Like nothing I believe in more than the fact that most people lose is they waste time on trying to fix that's never fixable. And what I mean by that is, I'm not gonna be an NFL quarterback. And I'm not gonna be not high energy. Do you guys understand that if I was 13% less high energy, that I would be 2 times bigger? There's a lot of people that can't deal with my energy. Do you understand that if I didn't curse, that I would have 12 million followers, not 6? Like, people don't get it. But I'm just a buyer of being who you are. I could be so much bigger if I toned it down a hair, cleaned up a little language. Today, not in 12 years.
Swordplay, yeah.
Got it? Understand?
Yep.
That's how I think about strengths and weaknesses. Look, I think that, giving is intoxicating once you get into it, but you can't give if you're not in a place of giving. And that doesn't mean money. That means happiness. And I think Ed, you, me, others, I'm really, really excited. I think the alpha male winner is starting to evolve. I don't think it means being a pushover, like some people get concerned that our culture is getting too woke on that. I think it means rounded in that, like, I want people to feel comfortable in their selfishness. I love saying, I'll do it right now. I want everybody to sign up for winetext.com if you buy wine. Now that's my dad's business, but that is like my family business. So I want people to promote their thing. I wanted people to buy K-Swiss. I want them to buy Empathy Wines. I want them to go to VaynerMedia and VaynerX.com and work with my companies. I want that. There's nothing wrong with that. And I don't want people to disguise, like what happens. You get into this gratitude guilt frame where when you're saying something, you hedge it with like, but it's altruistic. I'm like, you can have both. You can be altruistic and give and be awesome and be selfish and have a boat and a house and millions of dollars. Like, it's all good. And by the way, you can also do whatever you want. But there is no balanced conversation right now. It's almost like you have to be foofy, give away everything, or completely rogue, I'm all about me. And the reality is everybody's in between. And I want to be great at both, right? Like bleeding out of my eyeballs till 3 a.m. this whole week, every day, and being exhausted, but knowing that I'm one of the 3 energies. There's 5 energies. Alan Tisch, Michael Rubin, the founder of it, and me, and then Fanatics' company and VaynerMedia's company. They're working right this second. That have helped in 5 days to raise $10 million. That's going to feed some kid in Mississippi, some elderly woman in Westchester. Like eat. Not to mention all the happiness that comes when you're the person that wins speaking role in Leo, and you're just a normal person, and for months, you and your friends are just happy every day talking about it. Yeah. 83 people in your world, there's so much good that can be done, both selfless and selfish. So the biggest thing that I've observed when I've talked to teams and now speaking to a lot of kids, the top for me is how many people in this room, when they go to class or on campus, are in a place where they're headphones in, focused on their, given that you have the leverage right now. And the reality is the kids around you that want to say what's up are going to have the leverage in a decade. I think about this every day. I think about I always, it's funny when I talk, I always think about, it's funny to have AJ here. By having a brother who's 11 years younger, I kind of got a lot of practice early to spit wisdom or try to be a mentor. I think about what I would tell AJ if he was dramatically more athletic and was sitting in this room, and I would say yo bro, this is just the math around it. Yet there's 100 people on campus right now who are going to be the biggest CEOs or players in New York City in 7 years, and right now they're dying to take a selfie with you, but you have no time because you might be caught up that you have the leverage right now, and that's the biggest mistake. It's the biggest. I call it the high school girl rule, right? A lot of people didn't want to talk to certain girls in high school, but 6 years later they really want to talk to them, but they the leverage because they were a dick in high school. And I think about that a lot, and I think a lot of you are in that position right now. Please don't underestimate or take for granted. Obviously, if you're in this room, for the far majority of you, you had leverage in high school too from your athletics. And so you're used to that by now, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. That leverage is everything in society. It's crazy. I watch it every day. The whole social media thing, watching the biggest, most famous people in our society only 5 to 7 years ago be slow to Instagram because they thought they were fancy and they were celebrities, so they didn't go on, and they made fun of Instagram models, and they made fun of Instagram comedians, and they made fun of people, and now where that is the currency and they're not on it, just watching the most famous people in our society grabbing at straws, hitting me up of how do I do this? When just 5 years ago, they had all the leverage, and now we forgot who they were or don't give it. It's fascinating.
Tell us the story. Tell us the story about pulling flowers and reselling them.
Yes, this is who I am. This is my DNA. The first business I ever had in my life, I would go around the neighborhood, I would pull people's flowers out of their yards, I'd ring their doorbell and sell it back to them.
Dude, that's not,
It's not super
Listen,
super
ethical.
This is why my
right?
dad has such a big impact on my life. When I turned 14 and got in my dad's business, the first thing he taught me was that. And it saved my ass.
What
the
is
same
that?
reason,
Word.
word is bond.
Oh, uh-huh.
Word is bond, word is bond, and that's it. And it saved me because when you have this much level of charisma.
But what's that got to do with pulling the flower?
I'll explain.
Okay.
It basically elevated into ethics.
Got it.
It's even the spiel that I've been,
got it.
look, I'm not confused that some of the things I'm spewing here are not exactly aligned with you or everybody else. It's what feels right to me, just like you do what feels right to you. We all say what we say, and so, but what my dad did for me, when you have as much salesmanship and charisma and story capabilities as I do, this is just the truth.
Yeah.
You can manipulate, I can make anything happen. I can fundamentally make almost any human do anything. I'm being dead serious.
Make me do something right now.
I'll make you do something without you knowing, and then I'll tell you the story of how it happened.
Okay, I like that.
Okay, good. So
wow, man, am I gonna like this?
You're gonna love it.
Okay.
And so what's interesting about that is that's dangerous. That's
Well,
Hitler.
If the intent,
That's
if
a cult.
If the intent's bad.
Correct. And I don't have bad intent, so I was gonna be okay. What my dad did was speed up what I would have learned by becoming a wiser man. And so at a younger age, I became more straight and narrow and less full of shit, and that helped me so much. Right. If I didn't think of it as motivational and I thought of it as strategy, because mindset's strategy, right? Like being insecure is a mindset. It was put into you for a million different reasons. Figuring out how to get out of that hole by who you surround with, how you think, what you do. Insecurity is the biggest poison in our lives. Like, insecurity scares the fuck out of me. Lack of self-esteem is why people do everything bad. Buy dumb shit to make themselves feel better, do dumb shit, like take dumb shit, put into their body. It's all insecurity. I used to remember in high school, back to dating now, it made me, I'm gonna tie these stories together. I remember when I realized, oh, my friends drink alcohol to get courage. But they don't even that drunk. They just use it as an excuse to do shit that they wanted to do anyway.
Right.
It's just all insecurity, man. So, as far as failing, it's interesting. I don't have like a fantastic, obvious failure, and that's actually a weakness because it's very grounded in my deep, deep, deep immigrant roots. I've never done anything that has so overextended myself that if it didn't work, that I would really fail. Where I've really failed is on the things that I haven't done. I've fantastically passed on Uber twice in the angel round, and that $25,000 check would have made me $500 million. I fantastically didn't even reply to Air Bed and Breakfast's email to have, which is what B&B stands for, to invest in their company. I've passed on a lot of opportunities that have become fantastic. They're the most obvious. And then the really biggest mistakes I've made is when I didn't come to a conference like Brilliant Minds over the last 5 or 6 years, and that would have been the conference when I met someone and she and I would have done something. So it's much more, when you're crippled by opportunity, it's the hidden things that you've passed on that are the great mistakes of your career, especially when you're like me, who's not ever playing a financial arbitrage machine game where you're trying to slide one past the goalie and hope your timing's right. I'm a marathon runner in a sprinter's costume. And so I don't put myself in a position to be that vulnerable. The other thing is from 18 to 29, I worked every single day. All of them. And so I definitely think like one vacation a year for a week with my friends from high school or college would have been a good idea. So I was just so passionate. I so wanted to pay my parents back for being the greatest parents and bringing me to America that I was obsessed with building that family business. And I probably could have had a little bit more leisure in my 20s, which I regret. Not really, but yes. You know what I mean? Not really, not because I became successful, honestly, because I just loved it. Like I go garage sailing on the weekends, literally go to people's yards and try to buy things for $1 that they're selling that was in their basement, and then repost it on eBay for $8. And in that $7 ROI get more excited than landing an $8 million client. So for me, business is my hobby. It's a, you know, and so that's why I say not really, because I just loved it. I loved, you know, working the register on a Saturday when I was 25 years old because I love it.
When are the moments that you doubt yourself the most? Because I know you're extremely confident in yourself, but are there moments, and what are they, and how do you get through it when you have that doubt in anything you're doing?
One of the weird things I do is I'm in a funny place now where I'm not putting myself in a place where I doubt myself. And so I always wonder, is that like not challenging myself, or is that like staying in my lane? But like, I will tell you, like the only thing I think about being, like when you ask me like what's scary, here's reading in public is scary.
It's terrifying.
Because I can't read.
Yeah.
Even like the last time I did the Ask Gary Vee book, like for the audiobook.
You just kind of riffed.
Well, you know what's funny? I always do that.
Yeah.
Because I get bored, because that's why I got F's. So I'm like, I don't want to read my own. Like, you know, I'm like, yes, I know what's in here. Like, okay, you know. That's why people buy the book and the audiobook, because they're like basically not even the same.
Yeah.
It was fun actually for me, because I'm like, oh, I'm a better reader than I've gotten, you know, I think I've been forced to read so much over the last 10 years as we became a computer-based, email-based, text-based world. But I don't like to, like I would be, if you were like, hey, read my notes here right now to the podcast, I'd be like, you could literally ask me to get naked. I'm like, all right, well. But if you said read this right now verbatim, I'm like, because I don't like that. But man, it's things like, like throw me in a pit of snakes. I'm like, I don't want that.
Right.
Like jump off this building. That.
But there's nothing in business that makes you doubt
No.
yourself. Is there a situation that you could see, like you've spoken in front of 50,000 people?
No.
That's not scary.
At this point in my career, I've been in the room with everybody. And that means I have not been in the room with a ton of people, but like every
all the big leaders, every billionaire, every CEO.
That's right. I'm of the cloth.
Yeah.
I belong.
You're confident too, yeah.
I'll be very frank with you. I think I'm better. I think when it's all said and done, I win this generation. I think Elon and Zucks and the Uber guys, I think a ton of people make more money. I'm convinced now that nobody will make more money and help people make more money than me in this generation. I will win.
In that game, yeah.
In the game that I like, which is winning personally and winning helping other people. I don't think I'm going to be touched. I think I will be the guy. I think they will go back and be like, look, here were the people that were entrepreneurs during a time when entrepreneurship was cool, and here are all the different things. Elon invented the crazy, and Mark Zuckerberg created the greatest, and Bezos created the best companies and made the most money. And then Gary did the best job of making the most money, and he bought the jets, and that became symbolic. But he also created millions of 100,000 heirs and millionaires. That's what Crush It's about.
Yeah,
and that's why Crushing It's about. I think that's really cool. I spend an enormous amount of time trying to make my audience awesome out of the selfishness of the legacy, not to get them into a top of the funnel to buy my book or my sneaker.
Right.
I ask for it, but I have zero vulnerability or expectation.
Talk to me about how your mom played into that, because
a ton.
So I know your mom, you've credited her with really helping to build your self-esteem, but you're also a huge believer in like, don't fool yourself, don't tell yourself you're good at something you're not. So how did she make you feel so good about yourself?
She walked,
struggling.
that's a great, you're doing a good job here.
Thank you, sir.
It's a very good way to ask it, because the truth is, she strategically used and real. What I think in hindsight she did was she overemphasized things that were subjective or good. So she really, I'll never forget this. I opened the door for a woman in McDonald's in Edison, New Jersey. Literally, like when I was 8, just, we were both walking, we were a little ahead, and I opened it and let her walk through. If I tell you that my mom basically treated that event like I won the Nobel Peace Prize for like 3 weeks. But think about how smart that is. Like, think about how reinforcing that played out. Played out so much that one of the most interesting comments in the 250 blogs that I've done was I got an email from somebody who said, hey, Gary Vee, this comes like, hey, at first I thought like, and then I got into it a little bit and I was watching this vlog, and then the other day you nailed it home. And I'm like, I'm reading, I'm like, I can't wait to see what I did. He's like, you went into the elevator and you let all your employees go first. And it's just so interesting, right? These subtle little things. It's important. It's so fascinating what matters to people. And I get it. Like, I actually think that's right, but it's so weaving into me at this point. I don't recognize that. That's what she did well. She made big deals out of the things that were tried and true. And then when I got D's and F's, she punished me. Even though she knew I didn't need school, in her heart, she made me know that there was accountability for things. So I would lose television and video game and friends privileges it would always be for a month. She'd break down somewhere around day 14, 13. My sister would tattle on me when I would sneak in TV. It was a sitcom in itself, the three of us. She really made me feel special, man. She really did it right. She really, really, really pounded home my EQ, my kindness. I've done it with Xander too. He went to the playground when he was 2. We were at the playground. A little 3-year-old kid falls and skids his knee, and he walked over and was like, "Are you okay?" And I made that like a 2-week thing, right? Like empathy, right? And so she just really did a good job of making me feel good about the things that were around my kindness and my support of my sister and my leadership skills of my friends, and taking I took a bullet once for something my friend did in the neighborhood, and she thought that was a good thing. And just kind of those personality traits that I think, if all of us, everybody watching, wrote down like personality traits that we admire, anytime I showed any of those actions, she drove them home. And I think modern day parents and most parents do not do that. I think they focus on dumb like grades because they are insecure and they want to put the bumper sticker that their kid went to, Stanford. Like, it's real when you really think about what's actually happening. So much of it is misery loves company, or people reflecting of what's inside of them. So that's my punchline, which is like, good behavior is in perpetuity. I do believe in the modern internet to create awareness for something you want, whether that's to raise money for a nonprofit or to sell glasses. I believe the volume of content is, because then you're able to contextualize it to your audience, is absolutely the leverage of the current state of consumer consumption. One's capability, financially, energy-wise, creatively, but it's no different than saying run really fast. If you can run really, really fast, faster than anybody, you can win an Olympic gold medal and then make $25 million a year in sponsorship if that's what you choose, or live in a cave and say, I won a gold medal. I'm speaking to what I genuinely believe is the right strategy. How one interprets that, is really up to them. When me and my dad started having too much friction because I was getting the credit and became the man, and he was...
So when did that happen?
That happened probably 7-8 years into me running the business.
Okay.
Where it was like Gary, not Sasha.
Right.
And then because my dad's an alpha and he has pride, he came to this country with nothing, $100 in his pocket, and built something. But then I took it to such an extreme level that it was friction. And I was like, this, man, I'm not going to not have a relationship with my dad.
Mm-hmm.
My brother was graduating college. I was like, let's start something new. So the truth is, it wasn't that I woke up and I was like, wine's whack or I want to do something else. It was that I just wanted to have a real relationship with my dad, and I was starting to get really worried.
And so did that start like an addictive process in which you just kept having to move on to bigger and bigger things?
I don't know if it's that. I think from my standpoint, the answer I gave to you, I eat my own dog food. Straight up, I deploy patience. I didn't think twice that at 34, I didn't have a whole lot of money. I built my dad's business for him. I was leaving with nothing.
Really? Nothing?
Nothing. I don't own anything from Wine Library. I love when people leave comments like, oh, this guy, his dad gave him $4 million store. I'm like, no. I built my dad's business for him to a totally different level. He gave me life and gave me the opportunity to build his store for him. But at 34 years old, I'm worth dick. Zero.
So what do you do from there?
I get some guy to pay us $80,000 to be a VaynerMedia client. I get Mike Boyd to work for free and sleep on the floor. We grinded. And 7 years later, we have a $150 million business. And I just worked. To me, it's something that I'm pushing more clarity around, which is I want you to be happy.
And accountable.
Of course, well, the beauty of entrepreneurship is it's inherently accountability. Otherwise, it fails. I do want people to be happy, and I actually think accountability leads to happiness. When you think the government's in charge, the media's in charge, Facebook's in charge, this boss is in charge. When you believe somebody else is in charge of your life, you immediately start the process of unhappiness. Accountability is the framework of happiness. It doesn't mean bad things aren't happening. It's not delusion to the macro injustices of the world. It's called accountability. You know, my failures are funny because I'm an immigrant, so I've always got, I never do that's like gonna put me totally out of business. I always got a nest egg. I'm always on like 3.5 bait. Like I'm never doing something that's like over the edge, and if this, it's like, you know? My biggest mistakes have been the things I haven't done. I referenced it real quick. If you go read my first book in 2008, Crush It, 2008, I thank my family and one random person, Travis Kalkinick, who went on to start Uber, who used to, when me and AJ started VaynerMedia, used to fly around like in Vegas and just hang out with us because he had no job. He was in between. Starts Uber. I'm investing like crazy on everything. He asked me to invest in Uber twice, and I said no. Because I just bought an apartment, I was a little less liquid. I thought it was a side project for him. I also thought Uber was like a rich man's game. Like it was originally like a limo on your phone. So I was like, you know, how big is that gonna be? And I passed twice. We got in a little bit later, you know, so we did all right. But I mean, if I wrote my normal $50,000, $25,000 check, I probably left in the ballpark of 300 to 800 million on the table. So that's an L. And on some real, like, I don't even feel it, because what I've started to really learn about myself in the last year or so is I'm about the process, not the trophies. I'm just about the process. I love my game. I love my game so much. I want to win. I'd like to have that W, but money's funny, right? Like anybody who doesn't have it thinks it's the key to happiness, and they're super confused, and then they say, well, easy for you to say you have it. And I was like, yo, I didn't have it for a long ass time. I lived in the villas in Springfield Avenue in Springfield, in an apartment until I was 28, buying nothing, making 40, 50,000 a year, working 90 hours a week in a liquor store. So I've tasted both. So I made a lot of mistakes. I pass on all sorts of shit. I just don't know what the mistakes are because I say no so much because I'm so busy. What if that one meeting was with, you know? Make a lot of mistakes. I believe one of the great ways to mix things up is what you listen to and who you surround yourself with. I'm unbelievably passionate about people finding more optimistic, practical friends. And I think optimism can slide into delusion, which is why I say optimistical, practical. You know, it's funny, as you were talking about minimalism, like it's so interesting that you're the first person to ever say it to me that I can recall, and it feels very real to me. Like I don't have outside things kind of driving me, and that's what leads me to a lot of happiness. And so I would say auditing your circle. Like if somebody wants a meaningful life, live a meaningful life, just get happier. I think the people that you spend your time with is a big one. The amount of people listening right now who've got a mother who's super pessimistic and cynical, but they love their mother, and they don't realize that cutting down their time from 7 hours a week of engagement with their mother to 2, and adding, like going out of their way to seeing the person that's always smiling in the office and trying to spark up a friendship and become friends with that person, and cutting up that 7 hours a week from mom to 2 to mom, maybe 30 minutes with that person, and maybe reallocating the other hours to themselves or other things is a massive deal. It's a massive deal. A word that has been really running through my head quite a bit over the last couple of years is entitlement. Mainly because I have exploded on Instagram, and I get 10,000 direct messages a week from kids who are wealthy, affluent, being totally taken care of, and they hate their parents for creating entitlement, and they don't know how to get out of it. But they're making a lot of excuses. That's a different story. But what I realized is that same thing that a 19-year-old whose parents have paid for everything, and she or he is realizing, wait a minute, I'm a zoo animal and I don't know how to live in the wild. I believe there's a level of entitlement that is rampant amongst the Fortune 500 or biggest companies in the world, of thinking that they're entitled to the business. They make audacious and points of view on their competitive landscape. They say silly things like make razzes and jokes about emerging competitors who eventually become their biggest issues. And I've been thinking quite a bit about that. And I think it all leads to actually a very interesting place, which is ultimately both high net worth parents and executives of very big companies, unfortunately, are not consumer centric. Unfortunately, play within their B2B confines, score on different metrics than the actual end user that they're supposed to be deploying for. And so my luck, and that's what I'll call it, of DNA of only ever being consumer centric has led to the honor of sitting here and talking to you and having people pay attention and all the nice things that have happened to me. And it's fun because there's nothing more entrepreneurial or rogue or disruptive than actually caring about nothing in the middle but the end consumer, pandering to nothing, not awards, not the press, not the media, not the B2B environments, not the conferences, not the people that are fancy, just the end consumer, and building leverage there, which ultimately gives you leverage with all the things that I just mentioned that are in the middle. Everybody has an at-bat. The difference,
what?
An at-bat.
Yeah.
The difference between LeBron and Beyonce in the story I said in the first segment is there are gatekeepers that decide if you could become LeBron and Beyonce. You have to go in AAU basketball. You have to go to college. The NBA scouts have to know who you are. You are not some random dude in Iowa who's just great at basketball and then you can go to the NBA. Entrepreneurship is somebody watching right now who's never made the leap, who has the talent. They don't need Harvard Business School. They don't need you and I. They need nothing.
That's right.
If you're good enough, the market will accept you. And that fact that we can all have an at-bat to do that is special. And you don't have that. And that's why American Idol worked. People got at-bats. It wasn't Clive Davis. And that's what entrepreneurship in America is.
You're saying there's fewer filters in the entrepreneurial
And whether they go by the motivation
except
of
for
you
ones had in
saying
your head.
you've got to do it this way, or if I'm saying it, you got to do it that way, or Cuban says it's that way, or Ferris says it's that way. Whatever it is, as long as they keep hearing a lot of different things and make their own recipe, that's what I'm hoping to do. You may love talking about basketball. You might just be boring. So you've got to be self-aware about it. But my big thing is, you may be boring, but it makes you so happy. Like, my big thing is, people don't like their jobs or lives, and then they go and consume things to escape, and I'm trying to get them to create to get happy. You may never become Stephen A. Smith, but if you start a podcast about the Pelicans, even if it gets a little juice, maybe some free tickets to a game, now you're pumped, you like the Pelicans. It's a lot better than watching an entire Aaron Hernandez Netflix documentary. I also think that all of these things that we're talking about can be scaled, right? So my career is going along nicely, and I'm winning on email marketing, 90% open rates, and I'm winning on Google AdWords the day it comes out. I'm buying every wine term, that's working for my dad. And then comes along YouTube. And I see this platform and I say to myself, there's something here. And you can't run ads on it at the time. So I decided to do a show. And I never thought of myself as I thought of myself as gift of gab, but more like a good salesman or, a class clown that the teacher kind of liked, And so I didn't realize what I was going to be able to do in that format, but I started a very big show that garnered a lot of attention, and it really, really worked, and it really got going, and it really taught me, oh my God, I don't have to spend marketing money. This attention is trickling down organically to my dad's business. There's something here. And then Twitter came out, and I started using it to promote Wine Library TV, and I'm like, oh my God, this Friendster MySpace thing is about to become much bigger. It wasn't called social media yet. It was called Web 2.0. Twitter was known as a Web 2.0 app. And I started using it, and Google buys YouTube for $1.7 billion. And I say to myself, oh my God, I was right about this. I was right about Google AdWords. I was right about email. I'm not a wine retailer. I understand what people are gonna do. I need to become an investor in what I think people are gonna do. In 2007, I invested in Facebook, Twitter, and Tumblr. And that obviously changed my life. My brother was graduating from college. I was starting to make videos about business that were catching people's attention. And in 2009, I decided to start VaynerMedia to do marketing for the biggest brands in the world so I could learn big business because I understood Silicon Valley, I understood small business, entrepreneurship, but I didn't understand executive Fortune 500 land, and I didn't understand why they were doing so many silly things in a world where I thought Netflix, Facebook, Amazon were gonna be the next big thing, and they turned out to be way bigger than I even kind of predicted, even though I was predicting the tippy top. And so that's been my career. I've written 5 New York Times best-selling books around marketing and consumer behavior and psychology. But what does all this hyperbole around me mean? It means that I believe that every person who's watching this right now is me in 2009. Here's what I mean by that. I had a level of success. I was good. I was enjoying myself. I was building a big company for my parents. I was excited to think about what I was gonna do for myself next. But the scale of the internet, by using the tools, completely changed my life. And I believe that what the internet does is exposes things. So I don't think the internet changed me. I don't think it made me nicer and stronger at my craft. I think it made more people aware that I was nice and strong at my craft. And so I think for everybody who's watching right now, I don't think they realize that if they started producing content on LinkedIn about what they know, not what you think people want, not to get followers, but to put out content of what you know. Storytell. My grandpappy taught me when I was 10, this, I now did this for my salesperson today. That's the video. You don't have to be an expert. I'm not an expert. I'm a person that has hypotheses and opinions. And because a lot of them became true after 15 years, and I've put the actual business wins on the board, now people look at me in a different way. But I don't even the flattering introduction and our talk beforehand, she makes me feel so good, but I don't think that makes me special. I think it's just a nice feeling to be admired, and I think when you layer humility and curiosity around being good at a tool, great things happen. Let me give you an example. When books came out, I'm being serious now. When books came out, clearly, and I have no knowledge of this, but this is very easy to understand, clearly there were individuals who became more aggressive at reading them and amassed knowledge. And my intuition is the ones that were able to be practical and operating were able to do something with that knowledge and succeed. When tractors and innovation hit farming, the people that didn't demonize it, and many did, many said that's not real farming because they were fearful that it was gonna take away jobs from their people, which was a nice thing, but they were trying to fight technology, which is always the wrong answer. Let there be no confusion. If you hear or feel anything from this keynote and Q&A today, please let it be this. If you are fighting against technology, you will lose. It is the history of mankind. We are absolutely at an inflection point where there's people like me and different things happening where we're starting to have different conversations. Like freedom is what everybody's chasing, but they're confused about what it actually looks like. It's not how much you make, it's how much you spend. There's a lot of people who could be way more free if they didn't overextend themselves on what they're buying. Keeping up with the Joneses, it is the poison of our society. To scale, I do believe you need culture. At 1,000 people, we have offices in Singapore and London and Chattanooga, Tennessee. Like you've gotta really have culture. I think the fact that you're even thinking about it already means you have a shot at it. It means you're gonna throw money at it and you're gonna have an HR department that cares about the employees, not as a disguise for the finance team to fire people. It's just intent. Like just even hearing how much you know, talking, seeing your vibes on the crew, this is just intent. The reason I always win is because I have intent. My employees first, my customers second, me third. That's a very easy way to win in business. I think we all know that's not how most people do it. And if you're sitting here right now and saying, I'm gonna start this business to buy a boat. 2, customers, because they're the people that are gonna give me money. 3, employee, you're gonna build a very small business. If you're self-aware, you don't try to do things you can't do. You focus on things you do like. You don't try to be something you're not. If you have self-esteem, you're not scared to put it out, the content, the video, the picture, the audio, Because you're not worried if Sally Pants 49 thinks you're ugly. You're not worried that Rick Thompson from a competitive company says you're stupid. You're just not worried. You're not worried that you have bags under your eyes, or you're overweight, or you're losing your hair. You're just not worried. You're focused on your self-esteem. You're focused on yourself. You're focused on your self-awareness, which puts you in a position to succeed. And so all of you, one of the challenging times in my career was around 2012 when people all wanted to be like me. And I'm a very, very over the top, high energy personality who's very, very comfortable on video. And that is just not gonna be the case for everybody. And I tell everybody, and it took me a while to get to this good answer, which I think has helped people. Listen, my friends, if you're watching this right now and be like, okay, I see what Gary's setting up. He's gonna ask me to start producing a lot more content. That's the answer, by the way. Well, I don't wanna do video. Well, I'm like, good news, Sarah. You don't have to do video. For example, I'm a terrible writer. If I was a great writer, I'd be writing a lot more. Because writing on LinkedIn crushes. As a matter of fact, my team loves when I write all the copy on my Instagram posts, right? All of them, everyone, every post in my life. And they get pumped when I get motivated and like write a real good one because we know the post does better. Copy is the most underrated thing in social media today. It drives so much of the success of the picture and the video. So, by the way, you might be an audio, you might be a talker, but you're insecure about your visual of how you look, or the camera makes you freeze, but you're great with talking, so good. There's now Clubhouse, an incredible app you can go and be a thought leader in. There's just recording audio and posting that on your LinkedIn. LinkedIn, for this group, knowing who's in the room, is equivalent to what Facebook was in 2012. That will lead to incredible financial and emotional success to those in here that heed the call that I'm yelling today. Period, end of story. I could not be more passionate about everybody here getting very serious. And then what you put out is up to you. You know, my recommendation is that it brings value to people, whether it's entertaining, whether it's informational. But I also believe that stories are easier for people. This is something that I'm gonna start talking a lot more about. I think stories, just stories, like life lessons. Grandma told me, and then if you're good at, and I've already brought this up, I'm gonna bring it up again because I'm trying to help everybody here, give you some training wheels. If you say, hi, I'm Karen, I'm a sales lead at this company. This is for my team, but honestly, this is for the broader world because all you sales leaders, I know how it is. You know, when I was 9, my grandmother took me to a Girl Scouts event, and Sarah Johnson did this, and I did this, and grandma told me to do that, and then I did this, and me and Sarah Johnson were best friends in high school. And that's ironic because I had a big tiff between Carl and Carla recently on my team, and I did this, like my grandma did that, and now they just closed the biggest account together. That story, that should come very natural. And by the way, you don't need to call out Carl and Carla, right? Because that's active. You're in the world right now. You can be 2 people on my team. Just think about how easy that is for what everyone's struggling with, which is, well, what do I post? What do I post is grounded in lack of self-esteem and lack of strategy. Period. And so I'm here today to build your self-esteem, and not in a delusional way. I'm just trying to encourage you to realize how real this is, because the content creators that build awareness and audiences will have the leverage in business, whether it's a small, narrow world. And by the way, this is a small, narrow sector. Most of the business people on this call in this thing. That's great, actually. The reality is that's great, because then you run a couple of dollars in ads on LinkedIn against targets of companies that are in your sector, and you're getting exactly who you want. I actually like when groups are narrow, because you can get so much more specific. So anyway, I'm just very excited to be here. I want to encourage everyone to realize the opportunity. Again, if you can get to the place where you have social, you need to write, sing, and dance on Instagram, use hashtags, right? You got the book, you can read it, you can go sell it for $4. I don't give a what you do, but you need to go out and you have to make content at scale, because if you can sing, you need exposure. So if you can sing, well then, my question is, this is not just, you know, like I think people get confused by making it. If you want to write, sing, and dance, you also have to figure out how that's balanced with how you're gonna live. right? So there's a big difference between being Beyonce and being somebody who makes $50,000 a year singing. Both are interesting. That's your talent. So first of all, you gotta figure out how good you are, because people are delirious out here. People think they're going to the league. People think they're the next Meek. You know, people think that they're the next Beyonce. Like, people are delirious out here. Meanwhile, some people are it. So to me, here's the funniest part. There's no more debating. Take your phone, point at your fit self, and do it. And then figure out if people like it. And when people say they don't like it, you gotta make more of it. You need 2, 3, 4 years of rejection before you give up. Years. People post one post on Instagram of them freestyling, people shit on them and they give up. We've literally built society backwards. Like, when you first get out of the school machine, which maps 0 to real life, you're supposed to go play real life to have a chance to figure out what you do. So, where do you start? You start with what are you consuming and paying attention to when you have leisure time. Do you play video games? Do you listen to music? Do you like to go out and eat weird food? What do you like? That's where you start. So what do you like, Ahmed? Like, what are you about?
I'm kind of a geek. I like to read like comic books.
Good, let's start with comic books. Do you want to create comic books? Do you want to sell comic books? Do you want to buy comic books and flip them? Do you want to work at Comic-Con? All of those things would be a good place for you to start. Cold email and DM 850 different people that are players in the comic book world, and one of them might reply to you and that starts your career. Like, you could literally work for Funko tomorrow. You could literally work for Marvel tomorrow. You could. You just have to write 137 compelling emails and DMs and LinkedIn things. What's up, brother? Yeah, bro, you can literally do that. Who's 43 and older? We couldn't do that, Ahmed. That's not how it worked when we were coming up the game. You didn't just like say, that actually, ironically, once in a while I come across an OG who's like, actually I did do that. I wrote 800 letters. It took 2 months for me to get a response instead of 2 hours. But yeah, man, I mean, in the comic world, there's the movie aspect. There's the actual skill of it. If you like the drawing of it, you could. Look, let me tell you one thing about winners. A lot of winners didn't get there by accident. So when you write a winner an email, your favorite illustrator at DC Comics, hey Sarah, I will bring you coffee, get your laundry, grind and bleed just to intern or work at minimum wage just to see how you do it.
Everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. Well, maybe not everybody, but a lot of people do, but very few people actually pull the trigger and even fewer succeed. What are the barriers there?
Talent.
But that's disheartening. That means you're just like, you're born, you can either play in the NBA or you can't.
No, that's a very good point. I think it's the following. My brother AJ is a better basketball player than me because he's put in more work on his left hand and his jumper, so he deserves it. He's not in the NBA. You can be an entrepreneur. The problem is we've lost sight of being an entrepreneur who makes $137,000 a year doing what she or he loves is an amazing life. But right now everybody thinks they're gonna be Mark Zuckerberg. So we've become audacious and ludicrous and delusional in our entrepreneurial ambitions. And so I think we need a level of self-awareness. I think people are trying to be entrepreneurs at a level we've never seen before because the cost of entry of saying that you're an entrepreneur in your Instagram account is very easy. Right. It's also cool right now. I'm actually quite scared about that because I don't want to be the face of that because I think 95% of people are gonna fail, especially when the economy fails. Let me say something straight to camera. If you're not a successful entrepreneur right now, in the easiest time to be a successful entrepreneur because there's so much money in the system and the internet is at scale, you suck.
All right, that's some tough love right there.
It's the truth. This is the easiest time in the history of life to be a successful entrepreneur, and if you're not, and you're struggling, then you're not an entrepreneur. Listen, I'd love to be playing for the Jets and the Knicks or be opening the Grammys. It's fun, sounds rad. I'm just not capable. Doesn't mean I can't sing better. Doesn't mean I can't be a better football player backyard in Central Park. You gotta put in the work and you have to be self-aware of your upside. The other thing is we have too many students who now think that entrepreneurship is cool. If you weren't selling lemonade and baseball cards or pogs or burning CDs and flipping them in school, like if you don't have sales DNA or operational DNA or it wasn't fun to play store when you were 5, you didn't gravitate towards it naturally. You're gravitating towards it now because it's cool.
Right, and I take it you did all those things.
All those things.
Right.
And so did so many of the people that are successful as entrepreneurs.
Right, yep, yeah.
The same as singers went to choir. The same as actors signed up for the thespian club freshman year. Right. Like it matters, the work matters, the talent matters.
Final question, what's your definition of greatness?
I've never really thought of that. It's funny, a couple things ran through I'll just go with what ran through my head. First thing that came to mind is that a lot of people know who you are because you've impacted them in a positive way. The second thing that came through my mind was interesting was when you say somebody's name, you feel something. Like, like when you get nervous, like some version of like excitement and butterflies. I think it's, I'm fascinated by the word great because I think it's one of those words that has absolutely been like, I think about sports casting. It's funny, everybody's nostalgic about their youth and you always become the old man or old woman. Like the way great gets thrown around, I'd love to get your perspective on this because you've anchored into this so heavily, but like, yeah, those are the two things that come to mind. Like that mix between nervousness and excitement in your stomach. Or like, to me, it's like when you hear a name, like it's funny, Martin Luther King's birthday was the other day, right? I went to Martin Luther King middle school. Like I don't think we can wrap our head around the people that have changed the world because that's a level of selflessness. Like I'm pumped because I'm gonna be 50% selfless, and I think I'm gonna be legendary for it. There's people out there that are 100% selfless. I think for entrepreneurship, you have to be 50% of each. But it's wild to me that I am gonna be far more successful and great because of the DM that I'm gonna send to a kid tonight than for the 97 things I'm gonna be right about in business over the next century and will make me successful. Doing the right thing is always the right thing. There's something in that statement with greatness. I think to be great, you have to be an enigma. You have to be like against the status quo. You have to be willing to say work-life balance in its current state, like I did earlier in the, segment. So, yeah, just different. Like, and invoking a reaction. A human reaction must occur, otherwise you're not great.
How do you actually account for how much you have actually done, or how do you account, how productive you have been as an entrepreneur a day? For example, I could write one article and I could be very productive. I could write three articles, but I'm not productive. So how do you actually account of how much work I have done as an entrepreneur?
It sounds like you're doing what we all do, which is it sounds like you're being your own judge and jury.
Right.
So I think you just need to love yourself more.
Right.
I'm being serious. It's a very interesting insight. Like when you were asking the question, I think every day I'm phenomenal. I'm being dead serious because I'm trying as hard as I can. I have very good intent. I'm really trying. And if today was a less productive day because I was tired or a meeting didn't go well or who knows why, I'm just not capable of beating myself up today. I look at it over the course of time. I mean, you get to be the judge and the jury. What I was definitely, when I transitioned from wine to, let's say, entrepreneurship in my content, it was 2007, 8, 9, and we were going through a global economic crisis. And as you can imagine, as an immigrant who answered your question of what my regret is, I think it's very difficult to give advice that says, become more talented. Be born with more talent. Very not practical. So where I found myself was going to another place that felt very practical to me, and as you can imagine, it's all I ever saw for the first 35 years of my life, which was work ethic, was a controllable part of the game, that if you did that, if you're outworking your competition, practicing after practice, all the things we know about sports and music and theater and acting and all those things, that was an incredible advantage. And in a time and place where people were getting laid off and things of that nature, it hit the right tone. It was natural to me and the timing was right. The lack of patience, bro. I mean, it's crazy to me that literally patience and insecurity is 90% of the unlock for everybody listening right now. Their mom on them their whole life and said they're going to be a loser, so they believe it, because that's what parenting is. And they just want to have a, Maserati now. Right. And they'll do whatever it takes to do it. And so they did something, like, how many kids are doing something smart, like doing a good retail arbitrage on Amazon right now and making $100,000 by buying on Alibaba and selling on Amazon. Took a year and a half, 3 years to get good at it. But now we're taking every profit and buying some rando cryptocurrency because they're playing the lotto. That's just, this is what's going on in our society. Like, we have to have these conversations.
They're seeing big gains fast, like, let me jump in.
Like, there's a kid who spent 3 years being disciplined and getting good at retail arbitrage. It's a real skill to have an eye for, like, what to buy in China, how to set up on Amazon properly, how to run ad. Like, it's a skill.
Yeah.
They did it for 3 years meticulously. They made 13,000, then 47,000. Now they finally are making 300,000, and they could be on their way to 10 million. Yet they've chosen to kind of stop, jump on the short-term bandwagon of buying some weird cryptocurrency, hoping it's the next Bitcoin or Ethereum. I'm just seeing that every day, and I'm just like, it's being predicated on short term. Yeah. You hear one story, Zucks did it. Instagram sold in 550 days for a bit. Now that's why everybody started an app company. Yeah. To follow the leader, completely predicated on short term. I went the other way. While everybody was blowing up, I decided to build an agency. Boring ass business in the prime of my career, when everything was going for me in Silicon Valley. I'm proud of that. The holy grail of life professionally is to love what you're doing and be good at it. There's a lot of people who love what they do and they're okay at it. There's a lot of people that crush at something but hate it. And the only way you'll know that is if you taste more. I always smile when I'm on this kick because I think about oysters a lot. So, like, I'm really into them, and like I've gotten pretty knowledgeable about them, like West Coast, East Coast, like that kind of. And it's just so funny how many people have decided they don't like oysters without ever having them. And that's how I think about careers. You think you're FinOps, but you're really strategy. You think you're strategy, but you're really account. You think you're project management, but you're really FinOps. And I think about that every day. When something is working, and clearly things are working for you right now, what I've noticed for a lot of people over the last decade is when something's working from a monetization standpoint, you start losing your balance of jabbing and right hooking. I think in a world where you're monetizing audience coming into things they pay for, that you have to find, and that's why you're doing this. And I think the more things like this, where you can provide upfront value with no clear path to transaction, finding that balance is a challenge for everybody. Right. And most of all, when it's going well. So I don't have a good read on how much free content, free access.
We do about 80%. 80%.
So there you go. So there you go. So then I would say 82%.
Yeah.
Or 84%. because I mean that, Grant. Because what I do know is that people have a much longer life cycle when they disproportionately bring value.
Right.
When you are guilting.
Yeah.
And that's the word.
Yeah.
Guilting people into buying a $1,000 program or a $20 book because you've given them more value. You've given them $1,001 up front. You win.
So you talked about the volume and to get up to 5,000 pieces a day.
Yes.
But you also talked about the importance of being relevant
yes.
and having meaningful content. How do you ensure that you stay relevant to your followers and to...
The question is, in an ambition of thousands of pieces of content a day, how do I also nail home relevance, which is a big part of it? So ironically, this volume framework inevitably creates relevance. What will happen, it's kind of like a workout plan. If I'm able to get my partners, friends, people I care about, clients, my own stuff, into a framework of volume, inevitably, let's just say somebody was in here and said, approved, and everyone's like, okay, now we do it. Inevitably, tomorrow's board meeting is, well, what are we gonna say? And what you realize is, and this is devastating, like one of the things that's been really fascinating, and we work with very large companies, is once you see it, you can't unsee it. And the level of visceral negative energy I have towards the modern day marketing world, watching some of my clients starting the process of going there, it's real fun for me because literally a week earlier, they're having this subjective, completely non-practical meeting. And then a month later, after the first month of this work, they can't even stay in the room for 10 minutes because it seems so silly. It's like many things in life. Once you see something, sometimes you can't unsee it. So the entire model is built on relevance. All of a sudden, you are making a piece of content to female CIOs in Russia. Because you're making 5,000 pieces of content. Like, you're not gonna make vanilla anymore. You're in the business of selling vanilla. You are. Everything is so over corporatized and everything's trying to reach everybody. Even when the seed of the idea was a good idea, by the time it sees the day of life, it's vanilla. When you've made the commitment to producing volume, everything is relevant because you start becoming educated on how deeply powerful these platforms are. And if I want to reach a CTO that went to MIT and I want to use MIT colors in the creative because I know that makes her or him more likely to click it. I mean, this is real stuff now. All of a sudden, 5,000, you can't imagine how quickly, through a detailed conversation around this, 5,000 seems way too little. Everything, like, just think about the two examples I gave you and how your mind's running with the fact that this is actually in perpetuity. Every school, every neighborhood, every geographic, every job title, every organization, like, that's just the framework of 7 or 8 cohort beginnings that is an X and Y, which allows you to go forever. You could be making content that starts with, hey, are you 28 years old? And the person sees it as, yeah, I am. You know, like, you can't imagine how infinite this actually plays out. And so, you know, it was fun to hear you ask the question because I was smiling inside. I'm like, it's once you make the commitment to that framework, the only thing you can do is relevance. And by the way, relevance is the only thing that sells, not potential reach, which is the currency of big companies. GRPs and impressions and the cost of those impressions, potential reach, not actual reach. It's being reported as you reach those people. You don't believe that. You don't believe that article reached 29 million people. Potential reach versus actualized relevant consumption. That is the delta. I also think that when we start demonizing work ethic, we get into I think we are the byproduct of the last 10 years being so fruitful. You know, a lot of the people that push against me are venture-backed company founders who were able to raise $25 million over 4 years based on their idea by never running a profitable company. So everybody, and not that they're wrong, I just think everybody has different perspectives. So I think we need to get into a healthier, you know, minimalism. I'm sure, I don't know. I assume there's some sort of counter debate to it.
There's a minimalism is dead, and it's just the whole thing. I mean, from the same perspective of hustle, it's like, well, it's not a cult. These are just some ideas.
I think it's important. Yeah. And I think, you know, for example, I think I both love work ethic and minimalism, and I think they're, you know, I already know that I'm a kind of enigma and have like some pretty contradictions within me. So I'm hoping that because of that, and that's just the luck of the draw of DNA, and given the platform that I've earned and have been afforded, maybe I can create some better conversations. Because I think it'd be a really good time for all of us in any sector about any debate, red versus white wine, let alone minimalism, anti-minimalism, hustle, it's a really good time to get back to a cordial state of debate. I also know it's contextual. Like, how can't you tell somebody who's not afforded any opportunities that work ethic isn't gonna help them? There's no thing you can pull up that speaks to me saying money is happiness. I wasn't raised in that environment. I know it's not true.
How do people shift their mindset even in a horrible time for most people when they can't even do it during a great time?
Easy. My stuff does better during bad times. Crush
It. They
It.
have to.
Right. You and I hung out during the Crush It book signing. That's when you drove me. Crush It hit a nerve because people needed it.
2009, right?
Right, and that's when hustle was good. And then hustle during good times becomes manipulated into burnout. But I promise you right now, I don't use hustle anymore because I understand how the word got mutated into leading to anxiety. And so I don't want that. So I changed it. Even in Crush It, I talk about 9 to 5, making 40,000 a year, being happy. But I promise you hard work is about to be put on a pedestal again. Roadblocks are self-imposed based on judgment from other people. Think about, you know what? This is a perfect analogy. Think about how many times you guys get banged up on plays during games that so many people would take themselves out and not play at all. Oh, hit it. That, you know, when you get banged, like football's crazy. You guys are getting banged up on every play. And think about the tolerance. You guys all know everything. You know the kid in this room who gets chipped up a little bit and is out. And you know the person that's on this team right now that'll break their back and play. But for normal people like me, I'm like, every play would get me out. That's how I was as an entrepreneur. That I think people think of roadblocks. Do you know what it feels like to be 26 years old, have people that you went to high school with come to your liquor store, look you dead in the face as they pulled up in their BMW and say, oh, you work for your dad? And then you ring them up on their case of champagne that they're gonna use for their party, and you bring it out to their car and put it in their trunk, and they look you in the face with pity? I lived that life. And the way I took that scene was, I'll see you in 10 years. I was a DNF student. I sucked at school. I actually was so bad at school that I had my admin, my assistant reach out to my high school and get a copy of my report card so I could put it on Instagram the other day, because people are confused what success looks like or how you get there. Doesn't mean that you should look at me and not do school. It means that you need to look at yourself and figure out who you are. What are you good at? What do you like? How are you gonna get to the place that you wanna get to? And so for me, I got 4 A's in high school my entire career, all in gym, right? Like, I got a D in yearbook, you know, and so to me, there's just 1,000 paths out there. And so for me, I'm curious about one by one, for the 30 people in this room, where's their mindset? Where are they at? Who are they listening to? What are they judging their self-worth and their ambition based on? How are they counting the points? Because when you're a youngster, you're looking at all sorts of different things. You're being affected by all sorts of different voices. And for me, the only thing that worked, even though I was getting D's and F's and all my friends' parents told me I was a loser, even though all my teachers told me I wasn't gonna be anything, even though I didn't have stuff, even though I just was in my own head. I knew exactly who I was. But the thing that I was willing to do was I was willing to work. And the thing that my parents taught me was not to dwell, not to cry about it. I didn't have shit. When I rolled up on my mom when I was 9, when Nintendo was popping, because when it first broke, I was like, Mom, I need Nintendo. She's like, good, go get it. And so I shoveled snow and I ripped people's flowers out of their yard and sold it back to them. I think, again, what I'm really trying to establish in this talk this morning is I don't think people have quantified the opportunity. I struggle, regardless of circumstance, with people dwelling or complaining in a world where the internet is free, has no idea who you are, could care less, it's right there, and it becomes a game of skill, not necessarily finances, to actually win. It's interesting to me. It's interesting to me that you can be in the retail business overnight by setting up a Shopify account, which costs nothing, when that same action to sell something 30 years ago meant that you had to sign a lease and build out a store and rely on the local traffic that walked by. It scares me and excites me that the biggest music company in the world, Spotify, was built in Sweden by a kid. And on and on and on, and you've heard every story. But more importantly, for every ridiculous story we've seen of Instagram or Facebook or Uber or Spotify, there are hundreds of thousands of stories of people with wins that are micro versions. I actually think the most unhealthy thing in entrepreneurship and opportunity is the big stories that everybody thinks they have to build $1 billion company. I think we do not talk enough about the practical $150,000 a year, $300,000 a year, $700,000 a year business that you genuinely love what you do and you can live your life being happy and financially sound, and what the cost of entry to be able to do that is in today's environment, which once again, let me say it very slow, between putting out a media company, if you decide to put that on a WordPress or a Squarespace, a retail company, on the back of a Shopify, you could start a radio show that is global on the back of just uploading something you record on your memos on your phone and upload onto Spotify and Apple and SoundCloud. My friends, distribution is free. I know it's a nerdy thing. Like, it's not like some big profound statement, but let me say it nice and slow. Distribution is free. It used to cost a fortune. Now what you put inside of it is the variable of your success, not your financial capabilities to create the distribution. You have to, like, I wish we could zoom in. I literally have goosebumps on my neck right now. No, but really, I really do. It's like a very, I will live my last breath trying to get people to understand this is remarkable. This is a game of perspective. Are you educated or capable of seeing it from the lens that I'm speaking about today, which is the barrier to reach the end person, whether you're a financial advisor and trying to get to a client, whether you sell bow ties, whether you want to be, how about the fact if you want to be a professional football player and now there's all these websites where you can upload your film because the scout didn't come to your tiny, tiny town and now you actually can be discovered. Like, everything has changed. My question and my dream every time I speak is, can I get one person in this room to get their piece? I think one of the most important words for me to communicate in this talk today by far is patience. I promise you, no matter what you're doing in this room, and especially as I look around this room, first of all, everyone's uncomfortably attractive, and number two, but more importantly, this is quite a young audience. And I think the reality is the thing that I spend most of my time on is trying to get people to understand that patience is a very important variable of success. And more importantly, that I believe the far majority of people in this room do not have a great relationship with time. I am fascinated by people in this room who are stressed at the ages of 18 and 22 and 25 and 29, like they're running out of time. How many people, by show of hands, are under 30 years old? So for me, as you can imagine, when I see all those hands go up, you can put your hand down. Yeah, you're good. Okay, good. When I see all those hands go up, and I know in my mind, with the way that modern medicine and technology is going, that the far majority of this room is gonna live for another 80 years, it really gets me excited / concerned when people want their business to be huge next year. The quicker you want it, the more vulnerable you are. The quicker you want it, the more vulnerable you are. And what has been very fascinating for me is, even though on YouTube and Instagram and maybe some of the places you guys see me, maybe my energy is high, maybe my style of communication is fast, but my business actions are extremely slow. So I highly recommend you get your head into a place where you just go on the offense, straight offense, because you have the options. You have the options. And so I think it's the greatest time to be alive. The internet is still new. There's still so much to take. You could absolutely grab it. It could be yours. It's just about going into a different place in your mind and getting real quiet. Thing that got me through is everything got quiet. Everything became Charlie Brown. All those teachers, all those parents, all those people telling me I couldn't, or I wasn't, or I was losing, I just drowned them out. And so that would be my recommendation. Drown out the noise and get real focused on the opportunity. The way I deal with chaos and the way that I would deal in chaos if I was a upper middle leader in this team right now is realizing what's the alternative. You're in control. The reason chaos is easy for me is I know I'm in control. When a tornado or a hurricane or a virus or sales drop breaks out, I'm in control. Coronavirus, China sales are down, we're in control. We get to sit in a room and say, what are we gonna do? I love chaos. Like, if Mike Tyson's running at me and I'm a boxer, that chaos, this is why Holyfield beat him. You're in control. Yeah, it's not fun or scary or whatever, but you can duck. I'm most calm when there's the most chaos because I go into a place in my mind of like, what's the worst that can happen? What, am I gonna die? Oh no? Then business? Who gives a crap? Put it in perspective. Put it in perspective. Stop being scared. You wanna win in 2021? Be nicer. You wanna win in 2021? Have more compassion. You wanna lead in 2021? Lead with this, not with what your head thinks your wallet is gonna benefit from. And I know that I'm sounding fluffy and but let there be no confusion. I'm an assassin when it comes to business. You may be hearing fluffy things, but let me get real close to the camera here, my friends. I'm trying to win the whole thing. I'm trying to be the greatest entrepreneur of all time. I believe that kindness, compassion, empathy, sympathy, first for your employees, then for your customers, and then you can think about yourself, is not Mother Teresa stuff. It's not Gandhi, Nelson Mandela stuff. I believe that it is sheerly and obviously the foundation of successful business in today's transparent universe. Your meanness that you think is motivating, it can't be hidden the way it used to be. And so I want people to lead with optimism, kindness, and all these kind of soft skills because I think they're the emerging superpowers of business. And I think a lot of you should really be paying attention to it. I love that everybody's so into math and big data and quant and have not deployed the level of gratitude around the math of 400 trillion to 1, which is the odds of being a human being. There's nothing you'll ever accomplish that's more remarkable than that you have a chance to accomplish something. If we can lean into gratitude, there you go. A lot of good can happen. I don't know, I'm just super grateful, and it is an enormous, there is no Red Bull, there is no soda or coffee that comes anywhere close to gratitude. People think I'm drugged the up. I haven't even smoked a cigarette in my life because my mom got Nancy Reagan, you know, and so I just came to realize, oh, this insanity is predicated on gratitude. When you're so grateful for the at-bat, you're happy. But people dwell about dumb.
Yeah, the small stuff is so small. And
people are like mad when they get the wrong milk. Like seriously, I go to Starbucks, you know, I travel a lot, you go to Starbucks and like, I asked for almond milk. I'm like, this bought a $7 coffee. Like, it's crazy. What does the matter with people? We need to start some sort of cultural rule that anybody who's mean to somebody that works at Starbucks should get punched in the throat. Like, it should become a meme. Like, it's the collective responsibility of somebody to punch that person in the face. My great-grandmother and grandmother came from the old country, and really almost every time they drank tea or when the men were drinking vodka, you'd always kind of do this thing where you spoke to good health. You know, everything was to good health, to good health, to good health. And I think it brainwashed me in the greatest way of all time. For me, 2020 is a year that has incredible underlining pain for a lot of people who feel that they were robbed of years with people they love. I am one of the lucky people that did not have that happen. And so thus, after that, you know, Vayner Speakers and Vayner Productions took massive hits, lost millions of dollars. Doesn't register because that's business. That's almost like not real life. Like money is not real life. Real life is very basic. Do the 12, 15, 20 people I love, did they live in 2020? And yes, amazing, best year ever. And you know, I also am a good operator, but I will say this, if I owned 15 restaurants, it would have been, and we were mandated to close. Now, from my perspective, because I always believe in innovation, I believe my DoorDash and Uber Eats and direct to consumer would have been stood up already, and I probably would have grown. And I think it forced a lot of restaurants to finally do the right things. And so it's just a really interesting time. If you're a capable operator and you have life in a simplistic mindset, you're going to be happy way more often. I worked for my dad's liquor store when I was from 22 to 34 years old. I built my dad's liquor store to a $60 million business, and at 34 years old, I left and had nothing. It was my dad's business. I would inherit it one day, but I hope my dad lives forever and I'll be 90, right? So, like, I did what I thought was right. Different circumstance, but I did what I thought was right. I was an immigrant kid. My parents took me from Russia to America. I wanted to pay them back. I worked my face off, gave up all my 20s, right? Super easy to be humble with her when you're humble. You know? So, you know, when I hear you asking that question without knowing every one of your details, I think you gotta do what you have to do to get to the next step to give yourself more options. Got it? So like if you're good at it and it works and it can get you to that next spot that gives you options at 30, how old are you?
I'm 15.
Mazel. You're 15. If that can get you to a place at 27 that gives you options, you'll be a kid at 27. At 15, you think 27's dead, old. I get it. I remember. But I'm telling you to your face, it's young kid. You're a young kid. How many people here would love to be 27?
I am.
I want to go away from
Get to that next spot. I get it. Listen, let me tell you one thing that you will not hear often. The person that knows how to eat the most amount of usually eats the most amount of caviar. Got it? You need to eat, get to the next spot. Not directly, but you understand? If it's good like that and that can get you to the next spot, that's perfect, regardless of what it is. Whatever gets you to the next spot is exactly, move forward. It's good, man. I'm glad if you have something like that brewing, that excites me. That's real easy for me to see how it can go for you. You just gotta be patient. That's where you gotta stay disciplined and save that money and not buy all the stuff that's getting fed to you that you need. It's hard to get to the next spot when you spend $700 to buy a Supreme bag. We do not have the proper context around entrepreneurship. Until we start understanding the level of talent involved in it, we will always undermine how difficult it is because we think it's a process. And that doesn't mean, again, this is why underlining that, we have to contextualize how awesome it is. We have to start putting on a pedestal, starting a direct-to-consumer, jam business on Shopify where you make $183,000 a year because you love making jam because you and your grandma made it, and like that being a massive success because you're happy as and you can live your lifestyle and you live under the means of $183,000 a year. We have to put that on a pedestal. That is when entrepreneurship can hit its golden era. You've got two choices every day of your life. You're either optimistic or you're pessimistic. You're either seeing what's good or you're seeing what's bad. My whole life, even when I was like in a very different place, I would always just say 7 billion people. Now it's 7.7 billion people. Where do I rank? For all the that I got, for all the negativity, where do I rank? Am I better than the person that's terminally ill, that has a lot of money, that's gonna die in a month? Yep. Am I better than somebody who's living in a cage in parts of the world that we don't even wanna look at? Yep. And so, to me, this is a mindset game. If you try to figure out how to bring value to somebody and you persevere, like I really do think there's a play here. And honestly, to be very frank, I think Josh built a really meaningful business. I'm not in a mindset of investing now. I'd rather buy sports cards than invest in companies. But even though it wasn't like a perfect execution for me of like, I'm getting this value, then let me have him on the podcast. It was so important for me to have an actual human manifestation of the thing that I want all of you to do out there, which is like, look, if you want to be a rapper, a producer for rap, like go ask 47,000 times Metro Boomin, Sunny Digital, like Murder Beat, like just ask, Now, if you know how to ask with grace, it's going to work better. If you know how to reverse engineer the person of what they care about at this moment, like if somebody has a new album coming out and they're your favorite rapper, Young Nudie has an album out today. If Nudie's your guy, like you could have made 25 pieces of content on if you're that person, and sent it DM to him to help him post on his social channels, because everybody needs more content. And then that might have been the reason you got the job. So there's a cadence to it. My deep capacity to be empathetic and grateful, which transforms in what most people see is somebody who markets. But in the way I navigate my life and the way that I market to the end consumer, my unbelievable opportunity to speak in front of this crowd today is predicated on listening. I talk, you listen to my podcast, I interrupt every single person that is on my show because I've already heard what they said and I just want to move it along, and we don't edit. It seems mean, it seems audacious, it's deeply based on listening. We have to start the process of listening to the youth. They're telling us the answers. You just care what your neighbor thinks about your kid. You just care about what your mother thinks about your kid. You just care about what your sister thinks about your kid. You need to start listening to your kid. On social, I watch so many kids that I'm looking at, watching them progress, have a terrible game, throw 4 picks, delete it. Hit me up on DM. Gary Vee, I'm gonna detox off Insta. I know we've been talking, but like off this game last week, I'm done. I'm coming back in October. And I always think about that. And we all have to figure out our relationship with technology. But here's how I take it from my purview. I think people get too high when they get cheered. I think the reason people struggle when people hit on them in comments is because they're taking other people's opinions way too serious. The best way to be able to help take care of and deal with people on you is not getting too high when they're giving you accolades. When I watch videos like that, when people right now I'm on that place where I get so much love, I don't hear them. I really don't. I understand, I appreciate it, feels humbling as but I don't hear them. I still think I suck, I'm grinding, I'm in the process, it's early. Which is why when people shit on me, and they do, a lot, because when you're out there like that, that's just how it is, I can't hear them either. And so one thing I would consider is actually using social media's negativity and judgment as an ability to actually absorb it, create a framework where you can actually accept both pros and cons at scale instead of running away from it. Every time I see somebody shutting down and deleting, I get nervous because I don't see it as a detox for 99% of the people I talk to. I see it running away from judgment. And judgment is the only thing I promise you that you'll have for the rest of your life and that you have had. I believe in work ethic like nobody's business. I believe that work ethic is an enormous variable of success. And controllable, which is powerful. However, through the years, what I've not done as good of a job, though I've sprinkled it, though I've done unique pieces of content about it, though my second book was called The Thank You Economy, though in my first book, Crush It, I speak about this. The reason this is a very easy answer for me is the way you sustain it is loving it. It doesn't become being a workaholic when you're doing your hobby. The reason I started telling people that when people hear anybody can do it, they're like, Gary, this is the secret. I'm like, no, take a step back. We now live in an internet world where the cost of entry is 0. And every one of us who's listening right now has a passion, whether that's fishing, fashion, hair coloring, drinking wine, sport. I believe that anybody can start the process of creating content around something they're passionate about, which will always do better than something you're not passionate about. And that over time, that may lead to something that can pay you 30, 40, 80,000 euros or dollars a year, or eventually millions if you're ultimately talented. If you're sitting here right now and you're real passionate about something that doesn't have to do with the 4 walls we're in right now, you need to lean into that. Because that's the thing the internet's doing. The amount of people that can make a real living around having a podcast or a vlog or flipping they love versus getting a job they hate, and they can make as much or around the same much around having a podcast around Fortnite versus going and working in finance because they interned this summer in Wall Street and they think that's where the money is. That I know nobody here believes, but I've been saying it for a decade and I'm watching it every day and it's real. To me, I'm trying to get so much done in the 18 hours, 19 hours that I'm awake, that to me every second matters, and if I can hack it, like I'm gonna do it. And so, yeah, I'm a big fan of not spending time on that doesn't matter or the stuff I'm not good at, but I'll spend 3 hours reading every comment because I'm good at looking at it and synthesizing it and then understanding what the is going on.
Right.
And so I think people think there's some smart way to do it. The smart way to do it, everybody, is to figure out what the you're good at, quadruple down on that, and punt everything else. My ambition 10 years ago stays true today. I want to buy some of the most nostalgic brands that have ever existed when the next economy collapses. So when this economy finally collapses, I want to go buy Kit Kats, Bubblicious, K-Swiss, Ralph Lauren. I want to buy brands, and then I want to be the CEO of it. And what I knew then was I understood small businesses, I understood Silicon Valley. I didn't understand Fortune 500 businesses, but I wasn't gonna go get a job. So I decided to start the agency because at that point I realized marketing was my superpower. Hanging out with all those Silicon Valley titans. Why was I invited to the dinner? Why were they listening to me? It's because they were great at tech, but I really understood. One of the biggest reasons, forget about the current way people view Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg's deep understanding of human psyche was the number one reason we connected. I think I'm an extremely good marketer because I think this entire thing that we're at right now is an internal B2B ecosystem, and the only thing I pay attention to is the end consumer. I know so little about what's going on here. This is literally the first 3 years I was here, I only did this event. I didn't know anything else. You guys remember, Harriet just joined us to run comms from BBDO. She's incredible. I'm still asking her on the way here. She's like, we were finalist, what's it called? Shortlist. She's like, we were shortlisted for a bunch of stuff today. I'm like, I don't even know, I literally thought it was finalist. Like I still, Adam, yesterday we won a silver thing and I was like, what does that mean? Like I still am so deeply unaware of what's happening here, not out of audacity, not out of disrespect. I actually love coming here, the vibe, I love hanging with you guys. I love this. It's just that everything I think about is the consumer. It's the only thing that matters. And that's why I believe that, and I'm humbled by some, the most interesting or we're doing some of the most interesting things because we just see it different. We just see it different. And the way we see it is practical. So, the far majority of what you've already worked on, you would have never consumed. That's the truth. And I think that's my aspiration to come to things like this. Actually have a conversation about what the hell's going on, right? Like, creativity is amazingly fun. I think that we have to be very thoughtful that somebody's paying us to make something happen. I think there's a lot of audacity that seeps into this craft where it becomes about ideology and selfish behavior. I watch creatives and strategists make decisions all the time based on what they want to blow up a building. They want to meet John Legend. They want this joke to see the world. It has nothing to do with what the client needs and definitely nothing to do with does the end customer care.
Now I've got a special bonus clip that I think you're gonna enjoy, but before that, it's time for the question of the day. I wanna know what was your single biggest takeaway from this video and your plan of action for the next week. When you watch a video and just get motivated, the science says you have a 35% chance of actually following through on your goals. That's not good enough. No, not for you, Believe Nation, we gotta do something. But when you write it down and you create a specific plan of action for the next week, that number jumps to 91% chance of you following through. And when you commit to somebody else, like leaving a comment on this video, it jumps to 95%. You need to follow through on your goals. So what was your single biggest takeaway from this video and your specific plan of action for the next week? Put it down in the comments below so I can celebrate you.
Grew up in an environment where my dad worked every minute to try to make it in the new world, and he eventually owned a liquor store in New Jersey. I was dragged into that when I was 14, and really from day one, I started doing two things that are interesting to me. I started doing a lot of UI, UX, which in the way I would say that was I started moving my dad's store around. I used to stand behind the register, and it wasn't that busy, right? Like, where I could watch almost every customer walk in and where would they go and what would they buy, and intuitive as 14. I would understand, like, why do we send them that way where we sell stuff that's not as expensive as over here? Like, really, in hindsight, a lot of this stuff in the last 5 years I've recalled. Even lemonade, when I was 6 years old, instead of standing behind my own lemonade stands, I got my friends to do it because I would literally walk up and down the streets of New Jersey watching cars drive by to try to figure out what tree or what post to put a sign on. So I've been truly intuitively chasing attention my whole life. As a matter of fact, it's gonna bubble up in a minute. One of the biggest reasons I push against television advertising and think it's grossly overpriced and overrated is not because I don't believe in the craft or a 30-second video, it's that I don't believe people are consuming them. Like that, I think that needs to matter. You could literally make the greatest thing of all time. It's kind of like the tree in the forest. Like, you're gonna spend 9 months making something that nobody sees, seems like a waste of time.
If you want even more Gary Vaynerchuk motivation, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
I hate things like nice guys finish last. Where? It's just not true. Nice guys might be losing at halftime, but they win the game. Nice guys always win.